happened there. It just my internet just disappeared. That's actually the second time I think that's happened today. What happened there? It just my internet just disappeared.
Hell?
That's actually the second time I think that's happened.
Oh, I know what's going on here.
What happened there? It just my internet just
Come on.
That's actually the. You could do it, Dana.
Yeah, no, the YouTube web page for me is not working right at all. I can't even slide up and down on it. Like I'm not getting the chat window at all.
I've just deleted all the sodding show notes.
You deleted the show notes?
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I closed the window down.
Why did it delete them?
How does it delete all those show notes that way?
Well, I haven't deleted them. I've got to download them all again, is what I mean.
Why do you have to download them? It's just in your
you can open up. There should be something under history, and then
yeah. But I've got to find.
Oh, you closed the tab that you had opened all of the links on. I see.
Yeah, 23 tabs. Restore all tabs.
Oh, see, I do mine in 2 different tabs, so that way I don't accidentally close all of them at the same time.
Well,
hello, Graham.
I obviously need a medical degree.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. It just the internet at my house just decided not to work anymore.
It went kapooey
for a little bit. Had to take a rest.
Needed a break. Time out.
Yeah, Linda's been on a conference call for a couple of hours upstairs. And I think that ended before we started. Not sure, but can't imagine it'd still be going. Maybe we just maxed out the bandwidth.
Like that's your allotment for the day.
Yeah, that's enough for
please
the Nielsen.
Stop using the internet.
We're going to give it to somebody else so they can watch their Netflix.
Right.
All right. And it is that time.
We're going to have to clack again. I'm sorry because I turned off my recorder.
Oh.
Why did you do that?
Because I felt like it. Next question.
All right, get your damn clackers out. Oh, Dana, you sound like me.
I've had this cough for a month and a half now.
Oh, no. Please don't tell me that.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is just for Nick's benefit. I won't really use this at all, but I'm going to go ahead and do the clacking thing again. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, clack.
It should be 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, just wanted to change it up a little bit.
All right. Healthy bunch.
Whatever it is that you guys have, I don't want any part of it.
I can feel it creeping down the internet.
I know, right? It's making its way through the internets as we speak.
Yeah, it's coming out my microphone.
It's oozing. It's oozing.
Oh.
Damn it.
So I think the last thing I remember saying was something like, lovely. Like I said it really loud, and I think maybe that I bumped.
And you had your finger across your mouth like
you're really like this. I was talking about, doing computer-based training. I have no idea what the last thing I said was, though. I don't know if it ended in like a
with your finger over.
I just say we start over.
Comment.
No, I don't want to start over.
Well, you can pull it from my audio if it didn't record correctly onto yours.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm recording just fine.
Until you lost internet.
Yeah, you weren't until you. Yeah.
Oh well, that's right. Whatever else,
because I kept talking and I realized that you were frozen. So there was more to what I was saying.
Okay.
At whatever point you said lovely.
Okay.
Want me to just jump back into my final thought that I actually don't think I said?
I think we should do that. Ready? Ready?
Out of my head. Hold on.
All right. Wait. Steph, take 2.
But anyway, I will get back to those computer-based training, continuing medical education credits sometime this weekend, probably while I'm on an airplane traveling to Florida for a quick 24-hour trip, visit some family, see a football game, enjoy the nice warm weather, even though it's going to be warm here tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be warm. Then it's going to get cold again, I think.
I know.
Yeah.
but I'll take 80 degrees and near the beach for a day. It's fine.
I would do that
Weather
as
has a tendency to do that. 1 minute it's hot, then it's cold, then it's hot again, then it's cold.
Well, it
then
should stop.
it's crazy. Variety is the spice of life. Ah, okay. Nick, have you been up to anything interesting since the last episode?
Well, for me, very interesting. Thank you very much. Yeah, had a marvelous trip to Berlin. And rather than try and explain it all, there is some audio.
Some audio?
Yeah.
Oh.
So you could all go and have 15 minutes break now.
Okay, I'm going to play it.
15 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Fine.
a short plain tale today. So
So you had to compensate somewhere. I see.
That's right.
so,
Compensations.
so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this Berlin meetup audio, and then hopefully I'll be able to display some of the wonderful photography that Nick provided to go along with it as well. So you can all see it. Okay, here we go.
Hi, Jeff. It's Captain Nick here. I'm in Berlin, one of the places I used to live in when I was younger, and the old man was an airline pilot flying out of Tempelhof. And we're staying here courtesy of one of our fantastic listeners, Tillman, who is himself a pilot and runs a fabulous hotel here, the Circus Hotel, and the Circus Brewery, and the Circus Hostel. Fantastic places. And of course, Steph has been here before. And I've managed to corner Tillman. He's a very busy man. And we're at the top of a fabulous building in Berlin, having a lovely afternoon tea. Tillman, what's special about this place?
Well, thank you very much. This place is called KDW, which is Kaufhaus des Westens. And we are trying very hard to be a little bit like Harrods. Of course, we're not, but we're trying. And up here, the top 2 floors are heaven, because that's the 2 food courts. And we're sitting here having beautiful cake. And full disclosure, first thing that Nick did was he made me drunk before he pushed the microphone in my face.
Yeah, I have to say we did open a small bottle of champagne in honor of meeting Tillman again. The last time we met was Farnborough, 2 Farnboroughs ago, so that's 4 years ago.
That's 4 years ago. That's quite a long time ago, yeah.
Okay, instant correction required. That was only 2.5 years ago. Absolutely. What's happened since then?
Well, not as much flying as I would like to have, because the job and the family is getting in the way of that. But I've had the occasion to host an APG meetup with Steph when she came to Berlin to run the marathon. You know, the crazy things that she does, like running in circles for hours and hours and hours. But I have to say, she took it quite well, and she still managed to drink like a fish afterwards.
Oh, that's amazing. How does she do that?
I don't know. I honestly don't. It's sometimes I think she's not from this world.
I think we're pretty sure of that. Much too smart to be on the APG as well. Yeah. And in addition, she was very complimentary about your beer.
Well, I hope that you can see for yourself tonight or tomorrow. And we are a pretty modest place, but there is not really a discussion. We make the best beer in the world.
That's fantastic. Not at all a large claim. Tillman, while we're here to see the Christmas markets. But apart from that, anything special you think we ought to look at aviation-wise?
I would like to say many nice and smart things, but aviation is kind of a touchy subject in Berlin. As you may or may not know, we've been trying to build an airport for 10 years with not a lot of success, and one would think it's not rocket science, and one would think that the Germans are able to build things, but it turns out we're not. So aviation-wise, Berlin is kind of a desert, I have to say.
I know it's not entirely a desert, because I'm going to try and get off to Tempelhof Airport, which is no longer an airport, but the terminal, which is a fantastic example of German architecture stretching back to the 30s and 40s. And it's the airport my father used to fly out of when he operated in and out of Berlin, and it has a famous history.
Yeah. That's actually, by the time it closed, at the time it closed, it was the oldest commercial airport still in operation. On this field, Orville Wright did a demonstration of his flying machine. It's one of the very first examples of flying there. And I suppose they did some airship flying there. And then it still has the round form that you see at very old airports before they really had runways, when it was just basically a field, and the old airplanes would always have to start directly into the wind. So yeah, unfortunately, a few years back they closed it for aviation, but it's a beautiful park now, and you can actually play and walk and cycle and run on the runway.
Isn't that amazing? I'm surprised Steph wasn't running around there a few times at least. Brilliant. Now we're going to have a meetup in your fantastic Circus Brewery. Now that's Tuesday, that's tomorrow night. But sadly you won't be there.
Unfortunately not. It's so sad due to circumstances out of my control. Is that how you say it? Absolutely. I can't be there. So when we planned the meetup, I didn't know that I wouldn't be in Berlin. So very, very unfortunate, but I trust that you'll make a little recording and I can listen to that on the show then.
I shall, and I bought the magic mug all the way from London.
Very good.
It's in my room waiting. I've held it up to the brewery, but it hasn't filled up yet. Do I actually have to go there?
Yeah, you actually have to go there. I talked to the barman. He has the magic wand, and that'll make the mug full.
Excellent! I can't wait.
And you have to make sure that you take him home. After that.
Yeah, that's Julie's job. Exactly right. Anyway, well, thank you very much indeed. The next you'll hear from us is at the Circus Brewery with the rest of the team during the meetup. But thank you very much indeed, Tillman.
Have fun for that, and thank you.
Jeff, it's Nick, and this is APG Meetup Part 2. So we're chatting to Tillman, and now it's the very next day. Tillman is in Portugal, and we're in the amazing Circus Brewery. And I'm sitting down here. It's incredible. I always find this, quite gobsmacking when here I am. I'm in Berlin and I live in London. Beside me is Fred, who's come all the way from bloody San Francisco. Now, how does that work that we can meet up here in Berlin? He was in London the other day. I don't know. Man of mystery. Fred, how you doing?
Hey, guys.
And I won't ask you what you're doing here because I know that you're a very secretive man. We all think you work for the Central Intelligence Agency, but you'll just have to not affirm or deny that, I guess.
I mean, if I had to pick a cover, it would definitely be this one.
Yeah, being an aviation geek, I think it'd be a great cover.
I was just plane spotting, sure. No, I was in Europe for some business, and Europe is small, like all of us Americans think, and so I spent the 5.5 hours coming here this morning from Frankfurt to hang out with you guys today. So.
You did actually have some work to do in Berlin, didn't you?
I did. So I went to the office today, did a little bit of work, and then snuck out for an amazing dinner. Thank you, Nick. And,
don't thank me. All I did was pick the restaurant. We all thank Fred.
I meant for the company.
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Fred. Amazing that we can meet up halfway around the world. Isn't that marvelous?
Anytime. I enjoy it, so why not?
Now, Fred's going to hand up the mic on to Jilly.
Who wasn't paying attention. And you're in Berlin because I'm in Berlin, which is marvelous. What are we doing in Berlin?
We're having a grand time.
Doing what?
Visiting Christmas markets, drinking too much, eating too much, and generally having a wonderful time and meeting up with APGers.
That does sound pretty good, and I quite like that. Anything you'd like to say to the community at large?
Yeah, you should come and join us. It's good fun.
Excellent. Brilliant. And next, we have Fabian. Hi, Fabian.
Hi there.
How's it been going?
Good.
Excellent. Now, you flew in specially?
Yes, I did. Took a monorail flight this morning and did some plane spotting and...
plane spotting? No.
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Some plane spotting at Tegel and then... and then took the subway to the hostel and walked around town a little and met you for dinner, which was quite nice.
Absolutely. And now this is your second meetup here at the Hostel Brewery.
It is. That's true.
Yeah, a good spot.
It is. That's true, yeah.
And we have a quiz tonight. So not only is it an APG meetup, but we're going to quiz and we need to give ourselves a name. What's it going to be?
Well, I think APG crew should be our name. Isn't that obvious?
That sounds perfectly good. Yeah, a little straight, but very good. Now, finally, before we hand off back, if there's anyone else going to pitch up, we'll include them later on. But I'm dying to hear Fabian tell me in German what my hovercraft is full of eels sounds like.
What is eels?
An eel is a wiggly thing like a snake that swims in a river, an eel.
Ah, an aal, yes.
So in German, my hovercraft is full of eels.
We say hovercraft too.
No, you don't. You say Luftkissenfahrzeug.
Oh, that's right. That's the
Well,
word.
I don't believe this. On you go there, Fabian.
So my hovercraft is full of eel.
My Luftkissenfahrzeug ist voll.
Mein Luftkissenfahrzeug ist voll mit Aal.
There you go. You heard it from the horse's mouth. It took a little bit of getting out of him. All right. We're going to pause for a little while until the rest of the team arrive. But we're here on our own. Oh, and by the way, Tillman, thank you very much indeed. Even though Cullum wasn't in the bar and the barman knew nothing about my magic mug, it has magically filled up. Way! Woo! We continue. And the latest arrival is Tim. Now, Tim has an interesting point in his flying training. Tim, tell us where you've got to and what is in future for you.
So I just finished my multi-engine instrument rating, which I did on top of my CPL, which I acquired earlier. So I hope Dr. Steph will welcome me to the club.
I'm sure she will.
And I'm waiting to start basic jet orientation and multi-crew qualification later this week, actually. And finally go on with the type rating on the A320 in the beginning of next year.
That is fantastic. And how long ago did you start?
I started in February last year.
Brilliant. Making good progress. You and Fabian will have a lot to talk about tonight.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, any hints you can pass on to people who are thinking about taking up a career in aviation?
I think it used to be not a very good point in time to start, but right now, like, everyone's desperate. There's road shows everywhere. The flight school where I'm going to, they're on Instagram and they're basically everywhere looking for people to start the training. They have more slots for training than they have people to fill them. So if you're thinking about it, do it now. Don't hesitate.
Excellent. Get ahead of it, and then you'll be one step above everyone else on the seniority list.
Yeah, that's always a good thing.
That is the most important thing. Brilliant. Anyway, great to see you here. Your first time at a meetup, is it?
Yes, it is.
Fantastic to see you here. And thanks very much. We'll wait for the next person to come. Okay, Jeff, this is probably our last guest here tonight at the meetup, and this is Henry. Hi, Henry.
Hello, Nick. Hello, everybody.
Hi. Now, you're a glider pilot, or used to be, not so much nowadays.
Not so much these days, no, but I used to have a real cool summer and did my solo in a glider, yes.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. And you've kept up an interest in aviation ever since?
Yes. I did a lot of flying on the PC simulator and made some, had almost a professional introduction into aviation, but I didn't stick there. And, I kept my interest in aviation very much so, yes.
It sounds like there's a little story there.
Yes, there's a story behind everything.
Excellent. We must talk at length later. But we've got, this has been quite a long little bit for the show, so I'm just going to keep it a little bit short. But tell me, what's your favorite part of the APG?
The favorite part is, of course, the intro music. After that, it's going to be a steep decline.
Yeah. And who said the Germans didn't have a sense of humor?
As a matter of fact, I really like being here, meeting you in person for the first time, seen some of the guys before. So I'm really looking forward to this evening.
Excellent. Well, so am I. Apparently it's quiz night here at the brewery. So we're relying on Henry and Tim and Fabian to translate and answer all the questions. And then we're going to win a big prize. Can't wait.
The quiz is in English, Nick.
Oh,
So
damn.
no
excuses. Well, there. No excuses.
I hope
All right.
it's not about aviation, because otherwise we are
Yeah, we're
stuck.
going to be stuck. Well,
Yeah.
we'd only get 50%, wouldn't we?
That's all right.
Brilliant. Okay, Jeff, back to you.
Thank you. Thanks for that nice short.
That was oh my gosh, all of that was fantastic. Sounds like you guys had a great time.
Oh, I had a
Who was
good
that
time.
last
That sounded
guy?
like, yeah.
Was that
As you
Tim?
could tell, we were
That was
having a
Henry.
good time.
Oh, was that Henry? Henry,
Yes.
you're a very funny guy.
Actually, to be fair, they were all very funny. We had a fine evening, and we made it just over the 50% on the marks. We came fourth in the quiz. Which
Did you
I
win
didn't think
anything?
was too bad. No, we weren't allowed to because we had one too many people.
Cheaters.
Cheaters.
Yeah,
Got
we
it.
were.
Yep.
Yeah, they spotted that. Sadly.
Oh well.
Oh, that
Anyway,
was a lot of fun.
isn't that a wonderful place for a meetup? It's such a cool little brewery
Absolutely.
and bar spot in the town.
The brewery is a little bijou brewery, but I noticed they feature in several good beer guides for Berlin, so that's brilliant. And it was great to make some new friends, meet some new APG listeners, great with interesting backgrounds, and of course, lovely to catch up with Fred and Fabian again. And that was basically a lovely time. Julie and I had a thoroughly nice break there, saw the sights, wandered around, saw some museums, and more importantly, wandered around lots of Christmas fairs, drinking gallons of Glühwein and Jägertee, and among various other things. So Glühwein mit shush, rum, basically.
Oh, okay. I was like, I don't know. It's not sugar. It's not something. My German vocabulary is exceptionally limited, as Tillman and Fabian will
I used to know a bit more when I was 6, apparently, but that was a long time ago. And the only other little bit of news I have is that I can now announce my retirement has come forward a little bit. I have decided to hang up the flying boots as of the end of May next year instead of September, which was my original plan. And basically, for no other reason than I fancy having the summer sitting at home enjoying myself. So I can tell everybody now that we have jumped a bit ahead on my clock. And we now have 178 days.
Wow.
Under 200.
Retirement.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
That,
That's
definitely.
awesome news, Nick. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks. That's looking forward to that.
That is awesome. And that means you'll be there for the whole week in Oshkosh, right?
That was a primary reason.
He has his priorities in the right place, doesn't
Yes,
he?
he does.
Yeah, the idea was to guarantee time off for Oshkosh, and I
Ah.
have managed to do that. So that's going to work very well.
Excellent. We're looking forward to that. By the way, just to remind everybody, we are planning for our big meetup next year in Oshkosh, which is the 3rd week in July, I believe.
Sounds right. Sounds right.
Okay. And we are also put a deposit on an RV, a recreational vehicle, one of those Class A, really nice big motor homes. And I was communicating with Brian from Pasadena, also known as Brian Coleman, and from the Airplane Geeks. And he said he might be interested in doing the same kind of thing. So I told him I would mention it on the show. So if anybody else wants to maybe contact Brian and maybe get a group of people together to rent another one of those things, and we can like plop them together somewhere in the campground and have a big hangout or something there. So
perfect.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So much happening with you all. And for me, I just did a 4-day trip on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And at some point during that trip, I ended up coming down with this cold. And so here I am. I'm trying to recover from it. And it's kind of moved from my head. Well, it's actually still kind of in my head and in my chest. And I'm taking all kinds of drugs to try to get rid of it. But I don't like that feeling. Just kind of like I'm walking around kind of like foggy headed, which is, pretty normal for me, but it's worse than normal. And I'm hoping to get over this soon. But while I was on my trip, coming into, and by the way, I know that we have some listeners in Tulsa. You're probably just now hearing that because it was a last minute trip that I picked up. And also, I was not even supposed to be in Tulsa on this trip. I had, I think, 3 or 4 different reroutes during the trip because of the weather conditions. There was a big winter storm here in the U.S. called Bruce that affected the upper Midwest, and also along the southeastern corridor, there were a lot of low visibility conditions, including Atlanta. And that is what kind of threw us off on the second day of the trip. And I was supposed to be in, I think, Savannah and Huntsville, but I ended up in Tulsa and then domicile layover in Atlanta, and then came back out the last day to do a turnaround from Atlanta to Chicago O'Hare and back. And so at the last moment, I found myself in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so I didn't get a chance to contact anybody. I know at least 2 people there, Larry and I think Steve, in the Tulsa area. But I really didn't have a lot of time to do a meetup either. Got in long enough to grab a bite to eat, get some sleep, and try to start recovering from this, the onset of this cold. But while I was getting off the airplane in Tulsa, this guy standing at the door, ready to take over the crew that was going to take the airplane back to Atlanta. He was standing there. I'm thinking he kind of looks familiar to me. I don't know why. And then he starts talking to me about, hey, you still doing the podcast? And I said, uh-huh. And I'm thinking, oh, obviously I must have flown with him or something. And then he starts asking more and more questions about how's it, when you're going to record again and that kind of thing. And then he said, you remember, we met each other. I met you at Farnborough that first time in 2016. I said, wait a minute. He goes, I'm CJ Hemmer. Or he just said, he's CJ. And I went, oh, CJ. So you all remember CJ. In fact, Captain Nick did a plane tale.
Yeah, spent a day with CJ up at Mildenhall, I think it was.
Yes.
And wonderful day showing me around his C-130. It was fabulous.
Yeah. So, and at the time, I think we had talked about, or he had mentioned in audio feedback that he was kind of ending his time in the military, and was hoping to get a job in the airline industry. And I think we even talked about it on the show, the fact that he was actually hired by Acme Airlines. And I said, I hope that I get to see him sometime out on the line. And sure enough, I did. I didn't get to fly with CJ, but I did see him. And then he was getting on the jet, about to do all of his interior and exterior pre-flight duties and stuff. So it was good seeing you, CJ. And he said he's been with us for now almost a year, or about a year.
Wow. I must admit, when I saw his picture, I thought I didn't instantly recognize him with his hat round his ears and wearing that woofy pink tie. Oh, it was a blue tie.
We don't wear pink ties.
Yeah,
well, in October some do, but yeah.
So didn't immediately stand out as the tall, handsome chap in his green grow bag.
So I don't remember. I'll have to refer to that picture again. Maybe he was wearing a Christmas tie or something.
It was pale blue and very flashy.
Oh, okay. Well, it must be a Christmas tie because our normal tie is black. So again, great to see you, CJ. Hope you're enjoying flying for the Acme Airlines. And
yeah, congratulations.
Then I don't normally do this because there's less and less reason for Dana and I to actually go down into the crew lounge anymore. But I had a big break between flights during one of these reroutes on one of the days of this last trip, and went down there, and a guy walks up to me and goes, Captain Jeff. Yeah, he said, I've been listening to your show for like 3 years. And he introduced himself as Cody Diamond. And I said, oh, hello. And we had a nice talk, a nice chat. And so I just wanted to do a shout out to Cody. It was a pleasure meeting you, sir. Hope we'll get to fly together at some point before they retire this airplane, or before you move off of it. And that's it for me. It was a good trip. And as I said, I'm trying to recover from this illness, as you can probably hear from my voice, not the normal voice that I have. So I hope you can put up with it. And let's see. I have something here in the erratum about some of the one of the many mistakes that I've made in previous episodes, and I'm just going to save that for the news item regarding Lion Air, because Colonel Jeff sent us some audio feedback, and he'll set the record straight. Something I said regarding the 737 definitely having a stick pusher. It doesn't. So sorry. I just assumed because the 72 did.
Absolutely.
I was very adamant about that.
I know you were. I recall.
And then I started thinking about it afterwards. I'm thinking, oh well, the 727, so most of the airplanes I've flown, most of the transport category airplanes I've flown are T-tails, and all the T-tails I've flown have stick pushers, and there's a good reason for that, because it's very bad to get those things in stalls, and I guess I just kind of made the assumption that all the Boeings would have stick pushers as well, but they don't. So sorry about that. So before we get on with the news, let's move over to the coffee fund.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thing.
I'm not even going to try to sing.
I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me.
But that won't stop Dana. Yes, the Coffee Fund. That is your way, yes, dear listener, to become involved in the ownership of the show. Not complete ownership, maybe just partial ownership, like a little share of stock financially in the APG show company. You can do that by joining the Coffee Fund cadre and joining the Coffee Fund. Well, I just said that. You can do that. I just don't know where to go from here.
Well, you could carry on
just
regardless.
Give up and bury your head in the sand. What were you talking about? Coffee Fund?
Yeah.
Okay.
Johnny, how much more coffee? No thanks.
It started off so well, too.
I love tea. I love the APG community.
Coffee and tea and the Java and me. Oh. Sorry. Yes. The Coffee
good
Fund.
to me.
The Coffee Fund is your way to become involved in the Airline Pilot Guys show financially, if you have the resources to do so, of course. And you can do that a couple of different ways. One is via the Classic Fund, PayPal. You can do it like a one-time or a couple of time or a recurring payment, whatever you'd like, using PayPal. And since the last show, we have recurring payments from Vigner, Steve, Jason, and Stephen Abru, and individual payment from David Gonzalez, a very generous one. Thank you, David, for that. And you can also become a patron of the show via Patreon. And we have a new producer, Patrick Bliss, the cockpit crooner at gmail.com. I hope he doesn't mind me giving his email address out. But he must be a singer as well. Cockpit crooner, huh? And new executive producer, Magnus Rudebeck. Thank you very much for becoming a patron or patrons of the show. And you want to learn more about the Coffee Fund cadre, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did.
Stand by for news.
All right, let's start off with item A, an update on the Lion Air accident in the Java Sea. Glaucus sent us some feedback. He says here's an update, and he sent us the link, which we're going to talk about here in a second. According to the discussion on episodes 349 and 350, there's a switch that can simply disable the MCAS system. Do you think that this has been tried and failed, or that it was tried and failed, or the pilot simply didn't know about it and we're fighting to maintain control of the aircraft while the trim wheel kept clicking away? It seems the former was the case, which highlights a serious design issue with the system altogether. Looking forward to hearing your views on the matter, and if possible, also have Colonel Jeff, the good-looking one, thank you, Glaucus, for saying so, to comment. And you know what? I think let's just go right to that. Let's hear the good-looking Captain Jeff, Colonel Jeff, talk to us about the latest developments in this Lion Air disaster.
Hello, APG. It's Colonel Jeff, the handsome one again, giving you the second edition of the Lion Air feedback and the MCAS debacle. Captain Nick had some very good questions during the previous podcast that I failed to answer, so I'm going to take care of that right now. Nick's first question was if we trim in the opposite direction. That is the appropriate answer. You win. If you're on a 737 NG, on the 730 MAX, that doesn't do anything. On the NG, if you trim in the opposite direction of a runaway trim situation or pull on the yoke, either one, it should put a brake on the electric trim. It doesn't turn it off, but it puts a brake on. So now you should be able to trim against it. And if that doesn't fail, then the checklist does call for you to reach over and turn off the 2-step cutout trim switches. They're on the right side of the throttle quadrant. On the MAX, however, the MCAS is a totally hidden system to the cruise. It inhibits or disregards you pulling on the yoke or trimming in the opposite direction. It is the king of the trim at this point. You have no say in the matter. So that 10 seconds of 2.7 degrees is going to happen in a hurry unless you reach over there and immediately turn off those stab trim cutout switches. And basically that's what our new procedures tell us to do right off the bat, is to reach over and turn them off. The implication is we have a totally hidden system on the aircraft that basically takes control of the airplane that the crews have no training on or no knowledge of. So that's the first question. The second question has to do with AOA faults. The Lion Air jet had some previous write-ups about angle of attack differences and sensor problems. They flushed them, they cleaned them, never replaced them that I saw. MCAS is strictly an AOA-based system. And when it sees the high angle of attack, it basically engages and does its thing. It runs the trim, pitches the airplane over dramatically. And what I'm guessing in this case, because I still really don't know how this system works, I'm guessing that whichever AOA sensor failed, that was the side of the aircraft that was flying the airplane. So if the captain was flying, he had his autopilot or his flight director in the command position. Autopilot on or off, it shouldn't have mattered. If he is flying from his side of the aircraft that his flight director selected, or his, that's how we would normally fly, it's going to use his angle of attack sensor primary. And if that's the one that failed, that's the one that's going to be talking to the MCAS primarily. That's how I guess the system would work, since that's how most of our other systems work. So the fault drives the system. It's not an airspeed indicator. It's not a load indicator, although a G is involved in the firing of the system, but it's primarily an angle of attack driven system. So the previous faults were significant. In fact, if I remember right, one of the previous flights, they actually did turn off the stab cutout switches. That crew did, and returned to the field right away. So you asked the third question, I think I've already answered, but if I get this system firing and if I trip in the opposite direction, I lose. It just takes over. I can pull as hard as I want, and nothing's going to happen. As far as how much pitch authority I have, depending on if it's full nose down, it's going to take every ounce of strength the co-pilot and I have together. The latest report that I saw on the Lion Air is that the flight data recorder showed that there was 100 pounds of force being exerted on the yoke when they hit the water, and they were still going straight down. That's a lot of pull. That was probably both guys pulling for their lives, and they still couldn't override it. The last question, and I think I've already answered this. Jeff asked me this directly before. No, the 737 does not have a stick pusher. We have one heck of a stick shaker. I mean, it rattles, and it's the best vibrator in the world. I can just figure out how to get it on my back when my back is acting up. It'd be wonderful. It lasts for as long as you're approaching the stall, and there's no doubt in your mind that you have a stick shaker. So again, it's been a little bit over a week since my last feedback, and I still have not seen any more feedback to us as line crews as to what is going on with the system. I did see a news article that Boeing has met with the individual unions at Southwest and American. I have not gotten anything from the company or the union except for the immediate change is dictated by the air directive from several weeks ago. So I did see an article that said the United guys say they knew about the system and that theirs works differently than ours. So I'm not sure if they bought a different mod of the airplane than everybody else or what. But as far as I know, all the Southwest, all the American ones are the same. I take that back because I saw an article this morning, thank you BFF community, about Southwest is going to install an AOA indicator on their fleet. We already have that. We have an angle of attack indicator on the top of the primary flight director in the top right corner, and it's also on the HUD. And I use it a great deal. Having flown the F-15, which was totally angle of attack, and Nick, you were probably the same way in the Hornet. Everything was done by angle of attack. And it's a very significant gain in situational awareness, I think. First commercial airplane I've had it visible. And the odd thing is, all the commercial airliner flight directors, flight data recorders record angle of attack. So why they do not show it to the pilots has always been interesting to me. So with that, I'll let you guys discuss anything else you want to do about the Lion Air. And maybe I'll even make it into the chat room this afternoon, see how the rest of the day goes. Take care. God bless.
Thanks, Jeff. And I think he actually did make it into the chat room. Is he still there?
I haven't seen him for a little while.
Oh, maybe
he was there earlier.
Originally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had some technical issues on today's recording. There was about a 20-minute pause in the proceedings because of the internet at my home decided to stop working. But yeah, it is, as Liz said, it's great to have Jeff's insights. And again, that's interesting, that last little tidbit that he mentioned there, that somehow the MAX that United operates, the system operates a little bit differently than the others. That seems kind of strange to me.
Did you say it operates differently, or they were just aware of the MCAS system?
He said both.
Oh, I missed that part. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was distracted by chat room commentary about clowns.
About clowns, yeah. When you were busy talking about clowns there.
Sorry.
That,
we used to stop clowning around.
I know.
Yeah. But yeah, he said that on the BFF chat, he was reading an article that said that their procedures worked a little bit differently than as far as how to counter a problem with the MCAS system if it goes into the runaway mode or starts acting improperly. I'm wondering if that's just a misunderstanding by somebody out there reporting, or if that's really true. I can't imagine that they would make a different version of the MCAS system.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to his audio again because I missed all of that somehow. Yeah. But he was definitely talking about, the on his company's Maxes, they have the angle of attack indicator. On the Southwest ones, they do not have it on the primary flight display, although it sounds like, according to chat room information, that it's on the HUD, on their HUD. So just a little bit of differences in how you're able to configure the setup or what the companies can order for their configurations. I don't think that the systems work any differently, unless I missed that from what he was saying.
Yeah. Well, maybe I misunderstood what he said.
Well, he specifically said United, from what he understood, was that it did not have an override like American does.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
but he didn't understand how that could be because anybody else, I mean, American,
Right.
his company and Southwest, they do have it. So I don't know if that would be an option or not. That would be an interesting option.
Yeah. Seems like it's an option that wouldn't. I don't know how you could have that as an option if you need it in an emergency situation.
Well, if it's built into the airplane, which is part of the the design of the aircraft and the technology, I don't know. I mean,
why would you not have the ability to use it?
Exactly. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that might be just a misunderstanding by the journalist that wrote the article regarding what he's talking about there.
Because they're never wrong.
Yeah, never know.
I'm still concerned at the fact that this appears to be a system that will activate from a single angle of attack input.
Yeah, it should have some kind of a way to compare it with.
Yeah, you'd think it would be designed with a voting system, just because the chance of an angle of attack gauge or vane having a fault leading to a spurious activation would seem to be relatively high. And I don't think that's certainly not a fail-safe system from my point of view. I don't like that.
Right, I agree. Colonel Jeff, before he left us in the chat, also sent us a new link from Reuters, and it said from Seattle and Paris, Reuters, Boeing company is weighing plans to launch a software upgrade for its 737 MAX in 6 to 8 weeks that would help address a scenario faced by the Lion Air crew during last month's deadly crash in Indonesia. 2 people briefed on the matter said on Thursday. Crash investigators are focusing on the possibility that a new anti-stall system that repeatedly pushed the Lion Air jetliner's nose down was being fed by erroneous data from a faulty sensor left in place after a previous hazardous flight. Boeing has said cockpit procedures that were applied on the previous flight are already in place to tackle such a problem, runaway stabilizer trim, and that its 737 series remains safe to fly. But U.S. regulators have said Boeing is also examining a possible software fix after coming under fire for not outlining recent changes to the automated system in the manual for the 737 MAX, the latest version of its best-selling passenger jet. While plans for the possible fix are not final, Boeing's software upgrade could block the recently modified anti-stall system known as MCAS from continuously running until the plane hits its nose-down limit. And it goes on to talk a little bit more about it. So I would imagine maybe, Captain Nick, that what you just said might be part of what is going to come here in the software fix, where it maybe looks at the other AOA system to determine whether or not one is supplying faulty information, and if so, maybe not activate or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the way it works on Airbus, if you end up with this sort of a situation, is you have 3 computers and 2 of them have to be reading one thing, and then they vote out the broken one. So that, in theory, it shouldn't happen. Of course, it has something similar has happened on Airbus, but on that aircraft, 2 faulty angle of attack vanes just happened to give exactly the same faulty reading at the same time. So the system, of course, was fooled. So even in the best thought out safety systems, it's always possible for something to go wrong. There's no such thing as a completely foolproof system.
No, and that's why it's also important to have humans in the cockpit, just in case something that somebody hadn't thought of occurs, and then hopefully they'll use their human brains to come up with a solution. It doesn't always happen that way, but I think
increases chances
more times than not it does, because we never hear about the times that pilots successfully countered a major issue and safely flew the flight from point A to point B, and nobody was
Well,
really
you're right, but it
aware.
sounds like the crew on the previous flight of this Lion Air aircraft did exactly that. It sounds like they did cope with the same fault,
right,
and got the aircraft safely on the ground. But then, sadly, the maintenance rectification done was completely inadequate to solve what was a very potentially dangerous situation.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, I was just thinking about all of this as we were reading through that last article in particular. It's just amazing how, even things that started off much more basic have become so reliant on technology anymore. We're still talking about a plane that is still called the 737, which has been around for how long now, but completely different in terms of the amount of technology that it has on board compared with originals. And every time you introduce new things, there's new potential issues that crop up.
Yeah.
And it's always a bit of a learning curve, I suppose.
Yeah, all technology. I mean, anytime you have an advancement, there's definitely a big learning curve, and policies and procedures, unfortunately, tend to be written with mistakes and accidents that have come from circumstances, in relation to the the new technology or a mistake made by pilots. So. This is, I think, unfortunately, one of those cases that it was something that was not foreseen and possibly was not communicated, and thus the pilots didn't know about it. So they, but they were fighting and lost the battle ultimately. So,
right,
pretty bad scenario.
And the pilot groups that are upset about the fact that they weren't informed of these of this new system on this new airplane or this new version are, I think, rightly incensed that they weren't informed, and so hopefully this will all get straightened out. Now, I don't know if it was all Boeing, or maybe the individual airlines and their communications with Boeing decided, to determine whether or not this is something we need to really tell the pilots about, or if it was just something that was just withheld from everybody's,
Yeah, I think at this point, it's a known thing now. So get the information out there, make sure everyone's well versed in it, and prevent the problem going forward. Fix whatever needs to be fixed.
Yeah, I wonder if this wasn't in the QRH, and just they didn't know about it.
No,
it wasn't.
The only thing that was in the QRH that would address the situation is that the trim is running away, regardless of what's causing it to run away. Go do the QRH actions. Trim in the opposite direction, as Jeff mentioned. If this is not a max, anytime the runaway trim is running away, you trim in the opposite direction. That applies a brake. If you pull back on the yoke in the opposite direction of the runaway trim, that applies the brake. And then, of course, the third thing is you always want to remember those switches. I still remember where they are without looking. It's at the base of the center console on the right side, and you just put both of those paddle switches backwards, and that turns the stabilizer trim system off. And unfortunately, in this case, the way I understand this thing works is that by pulling back on the yoke in the opposite direction of the trim, or trimming in the opposite direction, doesn't do anything with the MCAS system. When it's activating the trim, you have to go for those trim cutout switches.
Yeah, it's an override.
So, it's just a shame that they didn't get to the point to hit those cutout switches and then start manually moving that wheel, and then everybody would be alive.
But just remember how quickly this all took place too.
Yeah.
I mean, that the trim that the aircraft put in happened very quickly.
Right. We weren't there. I know.
Yeah, not there, but
okay.
On that note, sadly, I've got to run.
All right.
Well, it was nice to have you for
a little bit.
A little while.
Yeah,
So,
good to see you again.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
I miss you.
We miss you as well. We'll see you again next time, hopefully.
All the best.
All right.
See you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Okay. Item B in the news. Rob sent us a link to an article regarding an incident that occurred back in 2017, I believe. trying to find the exact date on this.
July 2017.
July of 2017. Thank you. Oh, that's why I added that first few words in that first paragraph in July of 2017. I actually did add that, believe it or not.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just reading what you put there.
I should have highlighted it, as I do
highlighted other things.
with all the other things I highlight. In July of 2017, a Boeing Company 737 jet struck a light almost 100 feet beyond the end of a runway and just 14 inches high after taking off with insufficient power when its pilots entered the incorrect air temperature into a computer, according to an air accident bulletin. And moving down here, this is Canada's Sunwing Airlines avoided crashing only because of the benign nature of the area beyond the runway at Belfast International Airport in Northern Ireland and the low elevation of surrounding terrain, according to the UK Air Accident Investigation Branch. The 737 limped into the air with just 60% of the usual thrust after the Sunwing crew entered a temperature of minus 52 Celsius into the plane's flight management system, when the correct reading on July 21st of that year was 16 degrees or 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Quite a difference, a disparity in temperature. And the computer reined back the engines because colder air requires less acceleration to achieve the same lift. So, in other words, that's what we call reduced thrust or alternate power or flex power settings, all kinds of different ways to describe what we do to save wear and tear on the engines if we don't need all that power. Unfortunately, they really did need that power. The pilots didn't notice that the low takeoff speed until the 737 was approaching the end of the runway. And after takeoff, they continued the flight to Corfu, Greece, as planned because they didn't know that they had struck anything. It looks like one of the aircraft's tires crushed that light 100 feet beyond the end of the runway. And then there's also an article here regarding the same thing from the Aviation Herald, and it actually has some of the text from the report by the Air Accident Investigation Branch, which we'll include in the show notes so you can read it as well. But one of the things here that the last thing I highlighted, it said that the FAA should guide 737 operators on how to verify the required thrust calculated by the flight management computer against an independently derived value. Now, in my airplane, I don't know what it's like for you, Captain Nick. First of all, do you use EPR, exhaust pressure ratio settings, to set power on your engines, or do you use N1?
We use EPA, except on the 340-600, which doesn't have EPA. It has N1.
Okay. So with an airplane that has an EPR gauge, like mine, we set our power based on the... Are you okay, Nick?
The coaster stuck to the bottom of my glass.
Okay.
And I've just realized that I was talking about the 300 variant, which we don't have anymore. But I gather the 330-200 might be anyway. Generally speaking, we're EPA nowadays.
Okay. So that's the world that I'm used to. Is I think all the transport category airplanes I've flown, we set power based on the EPR, the exhaust gas pressure ratio, and the problem is you have to also cross-check all your other instruments to make sure that, because the EPR is susceptible to, especially in icing conditions, can give you an erroneous setting. And if you apparently enter the wrong data in your flight management computer, it can also give you some bad data. So if you cross-check, and what we do on the airplane that I fly in the MD-88 is that when we set an alternate thrust system setting, we just make sure we look at our N1s to make sure that we have at least 88%. If our N1 gauges are showing something less than that, that means there's something wrong with our EPR setting. And then, you would adjust, or either abort or adjust the power to get the power, depending what the situation is, where it should be. So in other words, the point is we have a cross check, just very much like Nick's unofficial timing cross check that he does when he starts his takeoff roll and starts the timing to check for normal acceleration. And that's another way to kind of have some kind of a cross check or an independently derived value. Now, the nice thing about using N1s as an independently derived value is that N1s are self-powered gauges, and the jets in the back. It's not using the electrical system of the airplane to power the system. It's internally generated or independently generated. So it's a pretty reliable indication on our engine instrument panel.
Now, that's great. These gross error checks are the way to catch it, but the correct way to catch it is when you input the data. Now, I'm assuming you do it the same way we do, Jeff, which is you'll do an independent calculation of your performance and compare the figures, and then one of you will enter into the box the numbers, and the other one verifies that the correct numbers gone into the correct box. Is that the way you do it?
No, because in our system at Acme, we have a separate department that does all the weight and performance data. And so it's all sent to us via our ACARS printer, and we print it out. And we don't do any of those calculations ourselves.
Okay. But when you enter the data, which is what happened here, they put the top of climb temperature into the flex box.
Right. Well, we don't put any temperatures anywhere. We just use the power settings that are given on our printout.
Okay. So you manually set those. All right. Okay.
So just a point of clarification for people listening who might not know, you're talking about EPERs and N1s as a way to gauge engine power output, basically.
Yes.
What's the difference between an N1 and an EPER? What are you referring to with N1?
The N1 is the compressor.
Right. It's the speed of the fan blades.
The speed of the fans in the number one compressor section.
Because there's also N2, correct?
N2,
which
and
is the
sometimes
high.
even N3. If you're flying like a RB211, I think that's
one of my airplanes. We got N3.
Okay.
Ooh, fancy.
N1 is the one at the front, and that is the one that most of us use for verifying proper thrust power settings. The exhaust pressure ratio gauge there's a gauge somewhere near the inlet of the fan, and there's a gauge checking the pressure at the tail end of the jet, and then compares these two.
It's the ratio of the two pressures.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And that gives you a very accurate indication of the thrust that's being produced. However, it is susceptible to some weaknesses, and N1 is a very reliable thing, as we mentioned before. It's not affected by icing or anything else. It gives you when you know what the RPM is of that N1 section, that's what the engine's doing.
Yeah, and I'm just going to raise us back about 50% and say it's engine pressure ratio.
Oh, I'm sorry, not exhaust pressure ratio, engine pressure.
Bringing that accuracy rating up to the 50%.
Exactly right. Really? So it compares the front with the back. So it's the total engine pressure difference between the front between the front and the back.
Okay. Now, why do I keep calling it? Yeah, you're right. Engine pressure ratio. Why did I call it all this
because
time?
Acronyms are dangerous.
Last 30 years.
Former professor / attending of mine used to say acronyms are dangerous because eventually you'll start calling it the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So he always wanted everyone to say out in long form what things were.
That's probably a good idea.
Well, it's a good idea, except it's not practical all the time. But it's a good idea to revisit them every once in a while.
I'd like to say that it has something to do with the medication that I'm taking right now.
It doesn't. Yes.
No, I don't think it really does.
Aaron totally blurred your mind.
What did you say you're taking? You said you're taking some Advil, cold and sinus deal. Does it have
congestion relief with antihistamine and
it's the antihistamines that'll make your brain a little foggy. Yeah. Not so much the Mucinex.
I'm walking around like in a fog. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Just click on Cat 3 and you'll be fine.
Cat 3, what did you call it the other day? Auto crash?
Yes.
So sorry about calling it the wrong thing many, many times. I do thank you for pointing that out. We're still.
No, that's good information because I think we sometimes throw out a lot of terminology out there, and I know there's folks listening who maybe don't have that detailed aviation background.
True. And there are folks listening out there that can't wait to correct us. So don't send me
That's true too. That's true too.
You're not.
We do this for both of you. out of the goodness of our hearts. We love you.
We don't want to hear it. We know I was wrong.
I wasn't trying to say you were wrong, by the way. I just wanted to.
I'm glad you
A brief description of N1 and EPR. Yeah. That's all.
That's why we need Miami Rick back.
I know. Come back, please, right. Rick. Where are you? It's not the same. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Alcohol. Good.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Which reminds me, I need a beer.
Can be good. Yeah, in certain circumstances, when it's appropriate, at the appropriate time.
Like now, I'm sitting here chatting with my friends. I don't have to drive anywhere. I'm not about to operate an aircraft.
Yeah.
It's about to start raining, crappy weather. I'm not going anywhere. Sit
Unlike
down, have a beer.
The Japan Airlines pilot that failed a breathalyzer.
Oops. And we talked about this one previously because it wasn't that he just failed his breathalyzer test. By a long shot, 10 times over the limit. At least if you're looking at British law, which I think is similar to U.S. law. Anyway.
Yeah. Apparently I think I read somewhere where he was sentenced to 10 months in prison. Yeah, John Picard sent us some feedback regarding that. Just to remind everybody, he had 189 micrograms of alcohol per 100 milliliters of blood. And the limit in the UK, anyway, for flying is 20. So do the math there, almost 10
Well, I have
times.
to do the math again because we don't usually think of blood alcohol volume, which is a little bit different than reporting it in the milligrams per milliliter. But anyway, It's excessive. It was way too high. That's what it boils down to.
So in response, a couple airlines in Japan, Japan Airlines and All Nippon, have introduced new methods to prevent pilot drinking incidents. They are now using a new breathalyzer, which is more sensitive, and they have requested the airport staff get involved rather than the pilots checking for each other. They don't trust us.
So I'm just curious, were they previously using a breathalyzer on each other to go, let's blow in this breathalyzer, see if we're fit to fly, rather than just not drinking and being on the safe side? They were actually testing themselves. And because most commercial breathalyzers, not the official police ones, well, perhaps even the official police ones, aren't very good at very low alcohol limits like 20 milligrams. It's a very small limit. It's a quarter of what our very strict driving regulations require. Mm-hmm. They weren't good at picking out when it got when you just were down at that low level. A blood test, of course, is very good. So it sounds to me like the airline is getting more sensitive ones so that the pilots can check themselves and be more accurate. Is that the way this is working?
That's what I'm reading.
Sounds like it. I would it's kind of like the honor system almost, right?
Exactly. Like I pitch up to work, I blow in this thing. If it goes green, I'm fit to fly. Not how much did I drink 6 hours ago? Or have I got away with it? I don't know. It doesn't seem quite right to me.
No, it doesn't. It's there's something else I read that how much this pilot consumed. I think it was
2 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
And 5 cans of beer.
Thank you.
So I'm just looking at just
2 bottles of wine.
This is just a table I've Googled and pulled up. I think this one's from Wikipedia. But just as an example, so if you take my approximate body weight, which I will not say on air, but I'm slender.
It'd be very embarrassing.
And then you plug it into this table and it just does it by number of drinks. And it's defining a drink as 1 standard can of one standard can of medium strength beer. So this beer that I'm drinking, I would say, is a little bit stronger than medium strength. I'd call it full strength. So it's the equivalent of 1.4 standard drinks. So then you go down this table and you see, okay, 1.4 standard drinks. I've had almost 2 of them at this point. So let's call it 3. And it thinks that my blood alcohol content by percentage should be around 0.11, which is over the legal limit. Yet here I am doing this podcast with you all.
It's a miracle.
It's probably obvious and apparent.
How are you even sitting up straight, Steph?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's a talent of hers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if I were male, I would just be at 0.08, which is the legal limit here.
But everybody's metabolism also.
It's different, and tolerance is different, and you can't go by this strictly. But this is approximation.
Yeah.
Either way, if you're flying an aircraft, the correct answer really should be 0.
Exactly.
So.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
the bit that I was a bit worried about was the number of pilots who, quote, felt unwell after a night drinking alcohol and delayed their departures the next morning. They said last month, 5 domestic flights were delayed because the pilots felt, quote, unwell, unquote. Is there a bit of a culture of this going on in Japan? I mean, that I'm not aware of?
That's what it certainly seems to me, because I'm thinking if I applied all of these circumstances to my airline, these people wouldn't be. I mean, it kind of gives you the impression that these people that called in sick because they were feeling unwell are still flying for these companies. Again, I'm making that assumption, but if that happened, well, I can't say that with surety, but it just seems to me that in other cultures, you would never get to the point where you drank that much to be in a situation that you'd feel unwell the next day if you're on a trip.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, that would just be, I think for most of us, that would be just crazy to think of doing in a professional setting.
It seems like it's more accepted. I could be wrong about this, but it's certainly based on what we're reading in this article, at least, that they're kind of giving us the impression that that's kind of that's their culture. People drink a lot, and this is the way we're going to handle it. They're also keeping pilots from drinking within 24 hours of being on duty instead of the current rule of 12 hours before departure. Yeah, I don't know. I think that to really fix this, they're going to have to do something about this whole perception of going out and binge drinking.
Yeah, that may very well be a cultural thing. I don't know.
I don't either.
I've heard rumors to that extent, but again, that's just what I've heard. It's a little bit of hearsay.
Right.
But it's hard to change cultural standards, cultural norms, I would say. Really, you have to get a lot of people behind it. You have to have a kind of a motivating force to change things. And hopefully some of these incidents provide that.
Yes. All right, moving on. This incident occurred in 2016, and I do remember talking about this on the show because we were thinking, what in the heck happened here? And just a reminder, it was a Jet Airways Boeing 737-800 on takeoff from Goa to Mumbai in India, and they backtracked on runway 26 and then lined up with runway 26, and they were accelerating as they were kind of making that backtrack turn. They were accelerating the engines for takeoff. When the aircraft continued to turn right, the crew rejected takeoff, not right away, and the aircraft went off the right runway edge, almost perpendicular, went over soft ground and across a road and came to a stop with the nose gear collapsed and both engines making ground contact. The aircraft was evacuated. 16 occupants received minor injuries as a result of the evacuation. The airline reported due to a technical glitch, the aircraft spun.
Can we put that in air quotes?
Yeah, air quotes.
Call them inverted commas.
Yeah. Technical glitch. The aircraft spun nearly 360 degrees while aligned the runway for takeoff.
Impressive.
So, why are we talking about it now? Well, just 3-4 days ago, India's Air Accident Investigation Branch released their final report, concluding that the probable cause of the accident was the pilot in command pressed toga, the takeoff go-around switch, when the thrust on the number 1 engine was 40% and number 2 engine was 28% in deviation from their standard operating procedures, which caused the number 1 engine thrust to increase at a faster rate than the number 2, resulting in aircraft yawing toward the right. In the absence of timely desired corrective actions, including rejecting the takeoff, in the absence of that, the aircraft veered off the runway, continued to move in a semicircular arc on the undulating ground, resulting in substantial damages to the aircraft. Let's see, there's some other good information in here. The application of thrust for takeoff was not as per the Jet Airways documented procedure for takeoff, which states that both thrust levers must be advanced till the N1, we talked about that earlier, displayed is 40%, and then toga must be pushed. So, and this is true, I think, in almost any airplane out there that's flying today, transport category. When you spool up the engines, you spool them up to a certain point, and then when they're all relatively equal, then you either advance the throttles or the thrust lever, the what do we call it? The what's Al call it?
Thrust levers. He doesn't like throttles because
the thrust lever to the takeoff position in your airplane, or in our airplane, we would turn on the auto throttles, and then the throttles would advance. And the reason for that is that sometimes engines can accelerate in a
asymmetric manner.
Asymmetric fashion. Thank you. And words, I'm having trouble with them.
It's okay. Here to help. That's what I do.
But Steph knows what I'm trying to say, I think. So you kind of like do a pirouette. And Nick, you probably see this as often as I do when you look on a runway, and sometimes you see these like really dark marks on the runway, like tire marks, and they're kind of going
wonder, how the hell did they get there?
Where are they going? Like they're just heading off into the grass, or like around in circles. Like what?
Yeah, someone donutting on the runway.
Yeah, and so it happens more often than you think, apparently. So anyway, the deal is here. Oh, it gets worse, actually.
Oh, good. Carry on then.
Yeah, so here we go. We put the toga switch on for both engines, and they're still spooling up asymmetrically. And the left engine, the number one engine, is probably providing a lot more thrust than the right engine. And then when the captain decided, you know what, this is not going well, I'm going to reject the takeoff. Apparently, he only brings the number two engine into reverse, which is not the one you'd want to be in reverse if you could only have one in reverse. And the number one engine apparently was still up at a high power setting.
So
that just
one at high power, two in reverse.
Exacerbated the problem.
I'm thinking of like there's a child's like toy scooter thing that you could kind of do that with, where you had like the controls where if you push one forward and pull one back, you're going to spin around in a circle. It's basically the same.
I think that's how they drive tanks around, don't they?
Yeah, that's the same thing. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Two levers and but I think it was not his day, and I think we can call that a complete cock up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the technical term.
That was the official report.
Absolutely.
Cock up. Wow. When I was reading this, I'm thinking, what? You're kidding me. That's crazy. And there's a picture here, and you can see that nice right arc scribed into the, first the runway, and then the grass and whatever off the side.
Yeah. Unfortunate.
Yeah. Not his day. Not his day.
Okay. No, last time he'll do that, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. Moving on quickly, our last item in the news, a Vietjet A321neo. This is a brand new airplane. I think they said it was delivered, 2 weeks ago? Yeah.
Oops.
2 weeks ago. Oopsie. Landing at a Vietnam airport. Let me see if I can find the name of it.
Ho Chi Minh City to Buon Ma. Oh, wow.
What?
Should not have taken that on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad you did. So what is that, Steph?
Buon Ma Thuat.
Buon Ma Thuat. Yeah. I agree with Nick.
They landed very hard because both nose wheel tires separated.
Why are you laughing?
I mean, that must be one hell of a landing.
I'm surprised the thing is still
it looks otherwise in very good condition, aside from completely missing the gear.
It looks a little deformed to me, but
yeah.
What do I know?
No, I was just, it's not like the whole thing collapsed down and it came down on the nose. So well done to Airbus for
Doughty or whoever does their undercarriage for them.
Mm-hmm. Or that,
yeah. And the tires, the wheels, obviously the hubs gave out, and they parted company.
and the entire leg looked like it's been crashed up into the avionics bay or wherever, whatever is above that. So I think a wee bit of damage on that one.
Yeah, that's true. That would normally be much longer, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
It'll buff out.
It's just the look of the yeah, the look of the retracting portion of the bogey above the gear above the top of it. It looks very strange angles. So yeah, I think that's a significant amount of damage.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of information on this one yet because it just happened last night, and I'm sure we're going to probably get some more data, maybe from the flight data recorder, to see how many Gs were experienced on that touchdown.
Yeah, when you do a heavy landing in an Airbus, I don't know if it's good for all Airbuses, but all of ours chunt out a big chunk of paper, and at the top is report 15. If you get a report 15 followed by lots of numbers, you know you've done a heavy landing.
You might have to talk to somebody, maybe.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
Dang. Oh well. Well, hopefully we'll learn more about that in the future, as we did on some of these other incidents. And now, let's go to the part of the show where we answer your great feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
That last item there was part of the thing referring to the Lion Air. We kind of covered it.
What?
Right? Didn't we? The last item in the news folder. Oh, I don't know if she put that in the.
No.
I hadn't updated mine, so whatever. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah,
I think we talked about all that.
Yeah, well, we did.
Hey, can we take a 30-second break?
I think we should, so I can grab something to refresh my throat.
Good idea.
Okay. We'll be right back, folks. How's everybody doing in the chat room? Yeah, wonder if it's still under warranty. I would hope so. You're welcome, Liz. Yeah, I didn't think anybody wanted to hear me blow my nose. All right. Thank you, Fluffy Bunny 8806. Fluffy Bunny.
What a great name.
Yeah. Why Fluffy Bunny?
Maybe he's a fluffy bunny.
Yeah. Well, why not?
Why
not?
Too hot to drive with the roof off. What are you talking about, Carl? There's no such thing. We're talking about Jeeps, Jeff.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I figured that's what you were talking about, actually.
Uh-huh.
Oh, look, I did. Yeah, come on.
Uh-huh. Ooh, jade. Very nice.
Appreciate that.
I'm finishing up my celebration. And
I
then
still have a couple of those in there too.
I'm going to have one of these.
There you go. So I came back from my 4-day trip, and before I left on my trip, I had a 6-pack of these. And then I went to go and get one, and they were gone.
Someone drank your jade?
Yeah, somebody drank my...
That's not cool.
And the only other person that drinks beer here is Chris. He went back to...
Did he take the jade with him?
Or
did he
no, he
consume it
didn't.
and
Actually, he didn't.
Oh.
I don't think he had room in the Jeep.
That's a definite Jeep problem.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I want to put this other 6-pack of beer in my car, but I don't have any space left. Why?
Well, actually,
because
if he really had wanted to.
Well, I mean, when there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah.
6-pack in your car? Are you allowed to do that?
As long as you're not
unopened.
Drinking. Okay. We can drive with open beer.
Yeah, I know. I've
Oh, okay.
I have participated. Yeah.
Fluffy Buddy 8806. His real name is Richard. He used to play games online, and it was funny in the game. Okay. Little Rock. We tried to meet up once, but it didn't work out. Yeah, I hope that I can get back to Little Rock as well, Richard. Okay. Y'all ready?
Yep. Sure.
Okay, the first item in the feedback folder was sent in by several of you, Ron, Sean, and Rob among you. The incident involved a Piper PA-31 Navajo, a twin-engine, reciprocating engine airplane. And I guess it was operated by a small freight outfit named Vortex Air. And it was flying... let's see exactly where was this. From Devonport in Tasmania to neighboring King Island, and the Piper Navajo landed safely at King Island Airport near the town of Curry, despite overshooting its target by 46 kilometers. In a statement, the ATSB said the investigation will involve reviewing operational Vortex Air procedures and interviewing the pilot. The ATSB allege that during the cruise, the pilot fell asleep, resulting in the aircraft overflying King Island by 46 kilometers. So luckily, the guy woke up and turned around and landed safely. And it could have gone very, very badly based on what I know of the geography down there. You know?
Well, so it looks like, and I don't know the geography well, so someone will probably correct me on this, but it looks like you have Tasmania, and then you have King Island, and then there's a large stretch of open water beyond King Island. Is that what you all are seeing?
I think so, yeah.
So had this pilot not come to in a timely manner, could have been quite a ways out over the open water with not enough fuel or time left to get back to land, potentially.
Yeah, I guess I need to look this up on...
I know, right? I should look. But while you're doing that, I will just take this opportunity to say that this happened in Australia, but here in the U.S., people who have gone through pilot training will be well familiar with the FAA's I'm Safe checklist, which stands for reasons why you may not want to undertake a flight. I'm Safe stands for illness, medication, stress, alcohol, fatigue, and eating. Have you been adequately nourished? So fatigue, that second to last one there, may be a factor at play here.
So, good point. Thank you, Steph, for reminding us of that. It looks like, based on that track, on that image that we have, if he had kept going, he would have hit the main continent, or not continent. What is this? Yeah, it is. It's
a continent and a country.
Yeah.
All wrapped into one tiny package.
And it would have been making landfall somewhere near Warrnambool or something like that on the south coast, just to the east of Melbourne.
How far of a distance is it across the water there?
It's about the same as the distance between Tasmania and King Island. So,
okay. So not terribly far. It just depends, I guess, on how much fuel they had on board and everything else.
In my mind, I was thinking it was more to the to the east, and there was a much larger expanse of water between.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking it was more to the west, and there was more water before hitting mainland, but
yeah,
just on that particular trajectory.
Regardless, it was not a good thing to happen, and the person flying could have easily run out of fuel, and it would have been a big problem for them.
Do you think you would have woken up then?
When they ran out of fuel?
Yeah.
At what point? When the engine quit or when they hit the water?
Yeah, when the engine quit.
Probably. That would... I'd like to think that's something that would wake you up.
Depends on how much of a sound sleeper they were.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. It's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, they make the point that he had the day off the day before, but that doesn't mitigate everything. If you are suffering from long-term fatigue, then you may not be able to recover after just one day. And of course, if you're also crossing lots of time zones, then your previous night's sleep may not have coincided with the time when you were tired. So you may have got very poor sleep quality. But all these things really affect long-haul pilots.
But even short
around the PA-31s.
Yeah.
Even having the day off before does not mean that you're immune from being fatigued.
No,
So
that's more self-induced.
You can have poor sleep. You can have, you can have a poor night's sleep beforehand for a variety of reasons. It doesn't have to be anything in particular. Sometimes that just happens. It can be self-induced. You could have stayed out too late. You could have undertaken a lot of vigorous physical activity the day before that may perhaps make you a little bit more fatigued.
I did read that the pilot said he had had a family emergency the night before, so he hadn't slept well. So that was probably the cause. But in which case, I'm sorry, you just have to phone in and say, I'm fatigued, I can't fly.
Yeah, because Nick and I have to sign releases saying that we're fit to perform our duties.
Yep, certainly.
If you can't sign that, honestly, then that's a problem.
I refer to that I'm safe checklist.
Exactly.
If you can't vouch for all those things, then you should not be flying.
Good point. Good point. All right. Item 2. Q Captain Tony. Q Captain Tony. No, wait a minute. Q as in Quebec Captain Tony. Let's see. He flies for a Canadian regional airline.
Or Q400.
Yeah. Q400, exactly.
Is that what it is? Okay.
I think it is. Yeah. Q400 captain. Or could be Q300 captain.
Could be.
Somebody wrote us in maybe further down the list, or maybe in our standby list of feedback, said something about a Q300. I didn't even know what a Q300 was. I know what a Q400 is. I guess the Q300 is a shorter version. I don't know. Anyway, as I did head home from Recurrent Sim, I've been listening to episode 348, and you had mentioned an accident at my home airport, Halifax, Nova Scotia. A Chicago-based 747 overran runway 14 in Halifax. I went to see the accident site a few days back, and it's alarming how close the aircraft came to exiting the aircraft perimeter and hitting a rural road. There are some interesting factors which I suspect will come to light in the TSB investigation. The Halifax Stanfield Airport has 2 runways in a capital T configuration. Runway 1432 is the shorter runway, 7,700 feet, that makes up the horizontal portion of the T. What I find interesting is that the longer of the 2 runways, 523, was undergoing maintenance. Ironically, they were installing RESA, which I believe stands for Runway End Safety Area, as has been mandated by Transport Canada. The winds at the time of the accident were right down runway 23, which is 10,500 feet in length. Unfortunately, due to the construction, the threshold for runway 23 had been displaced a few thousand feet, and most of the instrument approaches for runway 23 have been NOTAMed unserviceable. This is why the crew were unable to use the runway, which was into the wind, thus requiring them to land with a heavy crosswind. As for whether it was a slight headwind or tailwind, runway 14 was the only runway in Charlie Yankee Hotel Zulu with a functioning ILS system at the time, as runway 23 was undergoing maintenance and runway 32 has an RNAV approach, but no ILS. The maintenance has been ongoing for 6 to 8 weeks, and numerous cargo 777s and 747s have been in and out during the construction. My next door neighbor is an airport firefighter and was off duty at the time of the accident, but was called in to assist. He said that although the aircraft's cargo hold was empty, it was landing to pick up lobster destined for China via Anchorage. It was tankering a significant amount of fuel, likely due to the higher fuel prices in Canada. The aircraft has had significant damage and is in the process of being removed from its final resting place now. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment from this feedback. Did you see the videos that were out there on Twitter of how they were taking care of this airplane?
No.
Oh, it's painful to watch.
And they're just removing it in pieces and
they're
chunks,
taking
tearing it apart.
Yeah, these things, I don't know what you call these types of equipment, but they're like just bashing in, making holes, and then just prying pieces of the airplane, just completely destroying it.
Well, the airplane, I mean, to be fair, the aircraft was already pretty well destroyed.
Yeah, I think there was
was bent in the middle.
It's just hard to see, even though you know that there's no way you could fly that airplane again. It's just hard to watch them just take it apart like that. It's just, Anyway.
It was a Boeing, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
You have no heart, Nick. No heart. It's like
anyway, he goes on to say,
two sizes too small for Boeings.
This is the third major accident at Halifax in the last decade, including the Air Canada A320 hard landing and the MK Cargo B747 takeoff accident. The firefighters at Halifax are top notch, and despite the three major accidents, there were only 4 fatalities, all in the MK Cargo accident. I want to give a huge shout out to the guys and girls of all the airport crash fire rescue teams, such as my neighbor John, who are always there for us aviators and our passengers. Heroes, one and all. Hear, hear. We raise our glass. On a personal note, my wife and I just returned from a cross-continent standby adventure to San Jose, California, to watch a friend who plays in the NHL. We attempted to use our Acme standby agreement, but unfortunately the flight was full. Huh, wow, never see that. And we had to take a few other carriers, Porter, Southwest, JetBlue, and WestJet. The APG geek in me was a little disappointed that we didn't get to fly on Acme this time, but at least I didn't get dirty by having to shovel coal in the non-rev section of the Mad Dog. Oh, wow, that's kind of cruel, isn't it?
Yeah, you use anthracite nowadays, don't you?
Oh yes, much
clean
improvement.
burning coal.
Clean burning, yeah, it's good stuff.
Hope all's well with everybody in the APG community. Keep your eyes on the skies. From Q Captain Troy. Thank you for the kind words, Q Captain. Liz, make sure you ban this guy from the feedback list. Just kidding. Item 3, Jared. It's Jared. I was listening through episode 349 and heard Patrick's question about ATP flight school. I wanted to provide a few more less obvious details about ATP that might be helpful to Patrick and or any others considering ATP. I will note that I personally didn't attend ATP for my training, but the CFI I worked with on my private did. He now works for a regional airline based in Atlanta. I also had a friend from college go through the program who now flies citations privately in Texas. So the details I'll share are from their experience. First, it's important to note that ATP is actually just a standard Part 61 flight school, technically speaking. However, they are very much like a Part 141 school in that the curriculum is very structured and every student's experience will be somewhat similar. And now just a reminder to everyone, Part 61 is kind of pay as you go, at your own pace kind of flight instruction, kind of the way it was for many, many years before they came up with these structured curriculums.
And that's interesting for me to know because I actually assumed, I guess, that they were Part 141 because it is such a structured curriculum type program. So I did not know that. So
I did not know that either,
Jared. I really just figured that they were part of the 141 world.
I made the same assumption.
Mm-hmm.
So the Part 141 schools are the ones that have like a set curriculum, and you like almost going to you're taking a college.
ATP definitely does, and I think he gets into this a little bit more. So I'll let Jared explain.
Okay. Let's see. So I'll start with that paragraph again. First, it's important to note that ATP is actually just a standard Part 61 flight school, technically speaking. However, they are very much like a Part 141 school, that the curriculum is very structured and every student's experience will be somewhat similar. But you do lose the ability to take check rides with reduced hour requirements, a cost-cutting benefit of 141 schools. Now, most folks agree that the reason ATP is not Part 141 approved is that their CFI turnover, certified flight instructor turnover, is very high. Part 141 schools have to maintain a staff chief instructor to do regular check rides with students. Being a chief instructor requires a separate rating, which has a basic requirement of 1,000 hours pilot in command, 500 hours, and 2 years of CFI time. And he references 14 civil, what's the F stand for? Anyway, it's CFR 141.35.
Acronyms are dangerous.
I'm not even going to try it. All that to say, those requirements are not that appealing to someone trying to get to the airlines as soon as possible. Even a quick glance at ATP's website can confirm that their program is a regional airline FO factory. My old CFI and my college friend can both attest. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're prepared for it, in my opinion. Since ATP's curriculum is so standardized, your experience with their CFI should be fairly similar. In fact, it's a requirement to have gone through the ATP program to work as a CFI there. Furthermore, because of their mission, they have connections with numerous regional carriers. But anyone who plans to train there should understand a CFI who they might really like could be weeks away from starting an airline job, leaving the student with a CFI who got their ticket 3 days ago. 2 other important notes. 1, the ATP program is very pricey. They require large payments to be made on a regular basis, and there's no stopping those due dates from coming. However, ATP is registered federally as a trade school, so you can actually get standard student loans to attend, which those are usually at a lower rate, from what I understand, than a regular loan. But a zero-time pilot should understand that if he or she fully finances the program, they'll finish with $80,000 to $90,000 US dollars in debt. With that cost, though, the planes they fly are newer Pipers that are maintained in-house and often have glass avionics. Lastly, ATP is a full-time program. It would not be feasible to maintain a part-time job outside of the training. You're expected to be at the airport almost every day. All this being said, I hope this wouldn't deter anyone from attending ATP if it was the right choice for them. It is indeed a solid program that results in nearly flawless hiring rates for those who complete the program. As with any big life decision, it's important to know the facts. Like with any other flight school, a prospective pilot should interview the instructors, do some research on the planes in use, and fully understand all the involved costs. Thanks for a great show as always. And again, that's Jared in Duluth, Georgia. Good information.
Thanks for the info. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I love. Always lovely. We have experts out there that can give us the gen. It's brilliant.
Right. Yeah, because somebody was asking, what do you think of this school, Jeff? Well, I don't have any personal experience with it. I, only, references from people like Dana who said that, they knew CFIs who worked for this company. And
I've known people who have gone through their program, but who haven't been CFIs for them. So I don't really have the full scoop on what they do.
Right.
But everyone I know who's at least been through part of their program has had good things to say about it, especially the standardization portion of it, just because it's, there's no guesswork involved. It's just, this is what it is. Here's what you're expected to do. And they have very good materials to support their curriculum.
Yeah. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate that. Mike from Maynard, Mass. says, just when you've been discussing VFR charts and things like right pen. Oh, no.
Skip. Next.
Yeah. Some changes are being prepared. We're not going to go into the little the intricate details here, but apparently we're going to include a link in the show notes, and you can read it yourself from the AOPA, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association.org. There are some changes planned for traffic patterns and hotspots and aeronautical charts and that kind of stuff. So if you want to learn about what is coming, please click on the link in the show notes. Unless you guys want to talk about it a little bit more.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All set.
Yeah. Ahmad from North Africa writes, I think it's in North Africa. I think he's in Nigeria. That's North Africa, isn't it? Or is that mid Africa?
Yeah, it's Central Africa.
Nigeria is central.
Okay.
I forget where he's from exactly, though. Maybe he'll tell us.
I think it's Nigeria, but let's listen to. Well, he wrote, "It's hello, it's Ahmad Dan Hamadou. It's been a while since I've given feedback. I thought I'd try out my audio editing skills from my phone at my workplace. I was recently initiated into webcasting, videography, and video production. Not too different from how you produce the APG show. I used a WavePad Free. I guess that's an app for Android. It might sound a bit rough. I was in haste to do it while attending to other attention-hogging matters." And he talks about formats. He didn't know which one to attach, so he attached two of them. And I'm going to use the one that sounded better to me, the one that he boosted a bit, which was the Wave format. And so without further ado, we haven't heard from Ahmad in a while, and he's going to talk to us right now.
Hello, APG community. It's Ahmad Dan Hamidou here from Abuja, Nigeria. It's been a while since I said anything or wrote anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm still with you guys, albeit far behind, way far behind. I'm on APG 194. I mean, if you're looking for me on your nav display, I'm at your 6 o'clock, but you still won't see me unless you have something like a Boeing E3 Sentry AWACS helping you look behind. I just thought I'd say hi and let you guys know that I'm still alive, still around, and still listening to the show. Other than that, here's wishing you blue skies, clear weather, tailwinds where appropriate, and send my regards to the lovely Dr. Steph, Nick Anderson, Manu Rick, and you, Captain Jeff, and all the APG listeners. Have it to you. Over and out.
Come on. Thank you. It's always great to hear from you. And I promise you, one day, he asked me to do this a while ago. I didn't realize how long ago, to kind of show him my setup, how I run the show and such. But it right there, episode 194, you can tell that he's still in the past because he referenced Miami Rick and no mention of Dana.
He hasn't even gotten to episode 200.
No.
You're in for a treat there.
I'm all of a sudden I'm very quiet, huh?
That's better.
Just a little bit.
Okay. That's odd.
That's better.
Yeah.
I didn't change anything.
That's what I've been trying to tell you all along about my setup here.
Yeah, okay. It's just audio
Come in and they, tinker with things and
weird. Yeah, I'm not adjusting any knobs or slides or anything.
I wonder if Abuja Ahmed will be sad to find out that Rick no longer frequents the airwaves.
Maybe we should write to him and tell him that if he is going to be disappointed by that he should just stop listening.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea.
It's a terrible idea.
But wait a minute.
The rest of us are still here.
How did he know that Nick was on the show on 194? Were you?
Nick was inserting himself into the podcast.
I was wheedling my way in at that point.
But you weren't an official host at that point, though.
No, I wasn't. No.
I think he's been going ahead a little bit and
could be
testing the waters in the 200s. I'll bet
he's seen the future. He knows what's ahead.
But he hasn't yet gotten to that point where he was introduced to Dana. Okay.
No, he has to go back to episode 90.
Yeah.
91?
90, yeah. All right, moving on. Let's see, where are we, Liz? I think I've been missing these.
An hour and a half in.
Hour and a half, okay.
A little bit more.
I am going to continue then with our regular lineup. And this item 6 from Steve. He says, I just wanted to share this clip of yet another example of the infamously unfriendly air traffic control at John F. Kennedy International. And he sent us a link to a YouTube video. I have to say, whichever way you cut it, I find the controller to be very harsh here. His question is not clear and not grammatically correct. And then he berates the crew for not understanding him. This is an international airport, and part of its job is to be very clear and precise with ATC transmissions and be able to handle the challenges of handling aircraft where English is not their first language. His attitude sucks, and the level of arrogance with which he speaks to those pilots is shameful. What is it with these JFK controllers? Thanks as always for a great podcast. Keep them coming, Steve. Now, if you want to hear what it was that made Steve so upset, I think you'll see here by listening to this. I think it's just I don't know if it's the entire video or not, but let's play it.
Echo in the Echo Tango 503. Where do you park?
Bravo 28, sir.
What taxiway, the letter?
Oh, negative, sir. We're on 22 right, holding short of Foxtrot.
What taxiway do you enter the ramp?
Okay, sir. We just exit the runway and we're holding short of Foxtrot on 22 right.
You're not listening to what I'm asking you. What taxiway do you enter the ramp?
I'm not on the ramp yet, sir.
What taxiway do you enter the ramp? Tell me. What letter?
Okay, we can enter at Kilo for SCI 503.
That's what I need to get out of you. We talked like 6 times. Straight ahead and hold short of hotel, sir.
Straight ahead, hold short of hotel, right.
Asiana 222. Turn right here. Turn left onto 22 right and hold short of Juliet. Asiana 222.
Go ahead.
Turn right. Left onto 22 right. Hold short of Juliet.
Okay, right turn. Then a 22 light. Holding short. Juliet. Asiana 222.
ETD 503. Follow Asiana at Golf. Hold short of Juliet on the runway.
Yes, sir. We follow the Asiana, and next time I would like you to be polite with me. Thank you.
Okay, but if I got to talk to you 6 times and I got other people I got to talk to, and you don't understand what I'm saying.
You understand what I'm saying? Polite with me, all right?
You want polite with me?
I'll make a report.
Go ahead. Echo Tango Delta 503 at Hotel. Give way to the regional jet from your left.
Give way at Hotel to the regional jet from the left. That's Tango 503.
Janet 222, the Kilo is blocked. Call the ramp and see who, if one Delta comes out, you can go in.
JPL Kilo, Janet 222.
Okay, call the ramp. There's a Delta on the, look out to your right, sir. There's a Delta block in the alleyway. Call the ramp and make sure it's going to be open once Delta moves up.
Okay, call the ramp 130-77.
That is correct. Asiana 222, you're supposed to hold short of Juliet, sir. Asiana 222?
Go ahead.
Okay, I can make a report too. Hold short of Juliet. You already passed it.
I thought you were capitalized with the airplane and then going on Kilo.
The airplane is not moving. I told you to hold short of Juliet and call the ramp.
Ground submit.
Echo Tango Delta 503. What's the ramp telling you?
Okay, they're going to bring us in via Hotel for Echo Tango 503.
Okay, will it be open, sir?
So you have advised. I'll double check before moving.
All right, stand by. Echo Tango Delta 503. Turn right. When you turn right, you'll see a regional jet off to your right. Let him go by and then turn into the ramp.
Roger, right. Give way to the regional jet from the right and then into the ramp for Echo Tango Delta 503.
Janet 222, you keep moving the airplane when I tell you to stop. There's an airplane off to your right.
Roger, we could tell from the airplane says okay to go on Kilo.
The ramp does not control the taxiway, sir. Hey, Janet 222, do not move the airplane until I talk to you.
Right. Ground United 17.
United 17.
Yeah, did you sent us to 2165. Does that guy know that we're existing?
Nah, man, it's busy over there. He's give him some time.
Yeah, he's not that busy.
Not to you, but you know, you're one guy. He's talking to like 20 other people.
Okay, I'll just keep listening to the same people.
All right. Hey, Janet 222, you see the regional jet off to your right side?
Tripping inside, left side.
Let the regional go by before you taxi further, and then proceed to the ramp.
Okay, thank you, Janet 222.
Okay. First of all, this guy is just one of many controllers at the airport, and I agree with Steve. He was rude. Some would say kind of being that typical, New York kind of attitude about things. I do agree with Steve also that he did not use proper grammar, and that's very important when English is not your first language. Now, we understood what he, and having flown in and out of Kennedy, Nick and I know that the procedure is to call the ramp. Ramp's going to tell you what taxiway they want you to use to enter the ramp to get to your gate. And then you relay that information to ground control. So we're listening to this ground controller, but maybe these people have never been to Kennedy before. They don't know. They're not used to this kind of thing. And when you say, what taxiway do you use to enter the ramp? What he should say is, what taxiway will you use?
Or what taxiway has the ramp instructed you to use?
Exactly. But he kept saying, what taxiway
So
do you use?
it's one of those things, and I completely understand was it an Etihad flight, their frustration here. I think all of us in some form or another have had the experience of communicating with someone whose native language is not our own, that we do not share. And you might ask something that you think is perfectly clear, logical, intelligible, understandable. And you're met kind of with a blank stare, or you don't get the response that you expect to hear. The correct thing to do, in my opinion, in that instance is not to just ask the question in the same form again. You have to think about what information you're trying to get and rephrase the question. So that does take a moment just to think about it, reprocess, ask again, not allow yourself to become frustrated. In a high pressure environment like that, that can be difficult to do, but it's also a necessary thing to do.
Yeah, because as we see and hear, actually here in this case, because he wasn't changing the way he was trying to get that information, he was becoming more and more frustrated.
Right.
And if he had just changed the way he was saying it, perhaps he wouldn't have gotten so frustrated.
Right. Yeah, you have to come back, you have to rephrase. You can call this cultural as part of being a New Yorker all you want. If you're working in an environment where you're interacting with many different cultures, you have to understand your own culture and understand that at all times it's not going to be, or the way you behave or the way you act or the way you phrase things is not going to be understood by other cultures. That's just part of the job requirement. I'm sorry, can't get around that.
And regarding the Asiana thing, the way he said to check with the ramp control to see, he basically said contact ramp control. So
Yeah.
That I could completely understand how Asiana would think, okay, now ramp is in
Now I'm
control.
going to ramp. Yep.
Yeah. Not realizing what he meant was contact ramp, find out which taxiway they want you to enter the ramp, and then tell me. It's just frustrating to listen to the whole thing, because I know what's supposed to happen there. It's because I've been there many, many times, and English is my first language, so I understand differences in the way you say things. But clearly, in this case, that was not a good show for.
Yeah, and take the rude terminology aside. There's a professionalism aspect here too, where you're working in a professional environment, whether you're the controller, whether you're the aircraft. You have to be professional on both sides. You can't allow your temper, your emotions to come into play here. You have a job to do. The job is to communicate and to be understood. Figure out how to get that done.
Yeah. Nick, what do you think?
I agree with you guys.
Okay. Good.
There was something else I wanted to say about this too, but
we'd have to have like 5 minutes of bleeps.
Okay, I get it. Yes, I'm there with you, man. Yeah.
And I mean, it happens other places too. I mean, so my job often involves explaining a very similar problem over and over and over again every 15 minutes to someone different, someone who has a different educational background, cultural background, general knowledge background, language ability background. And it gets frustrating when you're doing the same thing over and over. In your mind, you know exactly what it is you're trying to convey. You think you're using terminology that the whole world could understand. You could say that to a kindergartner. They'd have no trouble knowing what you're talking about, and they'll just move on and accept it as such. That never happens. Everyone comes at things with a different angle, with a different background. And if you're clearly not getting the message across, that's not the time to become frustrated. That's the time to come back to yourself, figure out how can you change that? Is there a different way to say it? Ask, maybe not in this situation, but from my standpoint, you can always ask for clarification one way or another. I think both parties could have done that there, and do what you need to do to be understood.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important that we use standardized language in our respective fields. And in this case, it didn't sound to me like we were using standardized instructions or questions. And
no, and it's, there may be fatigue at play here as you get towards the end of a shift controlling. I imagine that those controllers are, I mean, your brain just turns to mush at some point where you've done as much as you can do, and you know what you're supposed to do, but you've just reached your capacity for being able to process that anymore. Doesn't excuse anything, doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, but there are probably other factors at play here too.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. 7. Captain Jeff, this is from Larry Gregory in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The article below finally documents the positive benefits of chemtrails. Wait a minute.
I spray my chemtrails at night so I can work all night and hide from prying eyes.
Chemtrails. It was only a matter of time. So far, no one has even gotten close to Captain Dana and the you-know-what compound. I won't say a word. And then he gives us the link to this article from cbsnews.com. Controversial spraying method aims to curb global warming. A fleet of 100 planes making 4,000 worldwide missions per year could save the world from climate change. Also, it may be relatively cheap. That's the conclusion of a new peer-reviewed study in Environmental Research Letters. It's the stuff of science fiction. Planes spraying tiny sulfate particulates into the lower stratosphere around 60,000 feet up. The idea is to help shield the Earth from just enough sunlight to keep temperatures low. The researchers examined how practical and costly a hypothetical solar geoengineering project would be beginning 15 years from now. The aim would be to have the temperature increase caused by heat-trapping greenhouse gases. This method would mimic what large volcanoes do. In 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupted in the Philippines. It was the second largest eruption of the 20th century, according to the United States Geological Survey. The second largest volcanic eruption of this century, and by far the largest eruption to affect a densely populated area, occurred at Mount Pinatubo. Oh, that's the... I did it again. I read the caption to the image. Anyway, in total, the eruption injected 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide aerosols into the stratosphere. The USGS said the Earth's lower atmosphere temperature dropped by approximately 1 degree Fahrenheit. The effect only lasted a couple of years because the sulfates eventually fell to Earth. So anyway, to continue here with the article, apparently this peer-reviewed study, review, whatever, thinks that with a large number of airplanes spending a lot of time in the sky at a little over 60,000 feet, that's high, and these airplanes have to be kind of big, and at first they would in the first year there would be 4,000 missions, increasing to just over 60,000 per year by year 15. And they say it's going to be a relatively inexpensive, and I don't know if you consider $2 billion. Well, let's see, what does it say? The estimate for development of cost of the aircraft or the airframe to be $2 billion and $350 million to modify existing engines. I don't know. This sounds kind of crazy to me, to have specialized airplanes flying almost constantly above 60,000 feet and putting out chemtrails, in this case, what do they call it? Sulfite particulates, to kind of mimic what a volcanic eruption would do. And it would have to be something going on continuously, because these particles eventually do fall out of the atmosphere. What do you guys think about this? Is this crazy, or is this something that actually might help?
How much do they pay?
Yeah,
that was my thought exactly. Well, how much do they pay? How much does it cost? Because ideas are all well and good.
said an average of
Remarkably
$2 to $2.5
inexpensive.
billion per
Yeah.
year the first 15 years.
$2 to $2.5 billion per year.
Yeah, but
Do you
I
think
guess
that's
that would
inexpensive?
be shared by, I guess, all the countries of the
No, I
world.
don't think that's expensive.
Yeah.
But compared with all the other things you'll have to do with trying to reinforce the coastline to stop water coming in, all the flooding, all the damage being done to properties because of the additional energy that's now existing in our atmosphere because of the warmer seas. I think it's a relatively inexpensive method, but I think to myself, okay, so we get all these sulfates in place, and the temperature starts dropping, and then we have a big volcanic eruption. Oops.
Okay, what do we
Just
spray now to
funded.
heat everything up?
We've got to get rid of that stuff. Quick, put up the vacuum cleaners. So yeah, it is. I guess it's a sticking plaster that you might have to resort to. I'd much rather we didn't have to go there, and we fixed it by not polluting the atmosphere in the first place. But you never know. This may have to be a resort, something we resort to in the end.
Well, see, Nick is going to be doing his part in May of next year by
retiring,
by completely reducing his carbon footprint.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess
I might still produce a little bit of methane, but not as much as Captain Al.
Captain Al, he said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Not as much as him.
So if we just basically stopped flying these jet airplanes and just got rid of all the airlines, that'll probably make a nice little dent.
Well, I don't know, because actually we're contributing towards global cooling already with the amount of contrails that we're putting out there. Don't you remember when part of this is all based on when all the aircraft over America were grounded following 9/11? They worked out that the temperature increase was a significant level, and I'm sure that data has been fed into this modeling. So they go, well, actually, having those aircraft up, leaving contrails around, is helping to cool the Earth. So why don't we just do more of it?
All right. Well, I certainly don't want this podcast to become an environmental or
Are we going green or not here?
Oh shoot! Thank you. Wow, how did I miss that?
We're going green.
Oh, I'm amazed you found the button.
That's pretty quick. He was right on it.
It was, wasn't it?
It's my new system, man. I've got all these
You
right
have a
here on my
system?
iPad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's only taking you like 5 years to get one of those.
Well, it takes me a while to figure things out. Okay? It's just going to get worse as time goes on. All right. See what kind of stuff I have to take from these people, my
Dreadful.
friends.
We love
Dreadful.
you, Jeff.
Yeah,
Yeah, we do.
yeah, you do.
Yeah. So I still want to know what they're gonna pay to fly one of these airplanes.
Well, so you're thinking about maybe leaving retirement? And,
I mean, retirement job. You need a side gig in retirement. For when you
exactly
get
right.
bored and you need a
Part-time
little
job,
bit of
bombing around at
pocket cash.
60,000 feet in some wacky airplane. Sounds
but they're
cool.
not going to start until another 15 years from now.
Oh yeah, but
He'll
then
only be like, almost 80.
Yeah.
Perfectly
Well, and his
fine.
dad is what, 90 something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
he could do
young
this.
still.
perhaps I
Although-
can do it from my home computer.
That's true.
Remotely piloted aircraft.
Good
Yeah.
point. They're probably not going to need pilots to do this, right?
No.
Huh. Well, maybe we'll do this. I'll do the same thing then.
Going into business together, I see how it is. This is dangerous, folks.
Liz, where are we now? 2 hour mark.
2 hours.
Okay. So wait, you know what that means? That means it's time for the best part of the show, which everybody knows is our this week's installment of the Old Pilot's Plain Tales. And this one is one that has been remastered. It's revisited. Joe Gilmore.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. Who was Joe Gilmore? Did you know that the Brits were intimately involved with the Apollo 11 mission,
that landed the first men on the moon. So my question to you is, after that history-making moon landing, what was the first drink to pass the lips of the astronauts once they came out of quarantine? A very quiet gentleman passed away a while ago. His name was Joe Gilmore. The list of the rich and famous that he knew was impressive, but very few of us would ever have heard of him. A softly spoken Ulsterman and devout Catholic, he met almost every US president from 1940 onwards. He was on first-name terms with President Charles de Gaulle and royalty, particularly Princess Margaret, the Queen's late sister. Frank Sinatra called him by his first name, and Errol Flynn, Ernest Hemingway, Laurel and Hardy regularly visited him. During the Second World War, Winston Churchill asked him to look after a special bottle of whiskey, and Joe was prevented from joining up, as his skills were considered essential for keeping up morale on the home front. His special talents also oiled the wheels of industry and commerce, the newspapers, and he helped the United Kingdom to join the European community. So quiet and discreet was he was often flown around the world to ply his special form of magic. So what did those astronauts drink once they were let out of quarantine? It had been specially shipped across an ocean for them, for which Neil Armstrong wrote a letter of thanks, and it consisted of 1 measure of grapefruit juice, 1 measure of Grand Marnier, 2 dashes of rose water, shaken well and drained into a wine glass, which was then filled with champagne. It was, of course, the Moonwalker, and Joe Gilmore was the mixologist and head barman of the Savoy Hotel in London who created it, and nearly 200 other wonderful cocktails that he served to the rich and famous. Joe recalled that at the outbreak of the war, he worked for a few months at the Old Bell Inn at Hurley, Berkshire, where he made his first dry martini. It was not a success. A cocktail book he found under the bar advised mixing half vermouth with half gin, which, he said, elicited a roar of disapproval from the customer, who obviously felt that his gin should have the most fleeting acquaintance with the vermouth. In 1940, he moved to the Savoy as a trainee barman on £3 10 shillings a week. The night that he invented one of his first cocktails, March the 8th, 1941, was a traumatic one. He had been transferred from the Savoy to the Pillowcay bar in its sister establishment, the old Berkeley Hotel. It was the night that the Café de Paris was bombed, and customers came in a shocking state, he recalled. 34 people had been killed, and some of the survivors and witnesses crawled from the rubble and stumbled into the Berkeley. They said, "Joe, give us something with a sting in it, will you?" he recalled. So, there and then, I invented the Berkeley Stinger. That was one night I shall never forget. In 1954, Joe invented the Savoy Corpse Reviver, one of a series of hangover cures which made their appearance during, of all things, Prohibition. The phrase, "Set 'em up, Joe," in Sinatra's song One for My Baby, was how the singer always announced his arrival to Joe at the American bar in the Savoy. He created a special drink for Sir Winston Churchill's 90th birthday called 410, and also in 1975, to mark the first American and Russian link-up in space, the Apollo-Soyuz project, Joe mixed the link-up cocktail, which was sent to the US and the USSR for the astronauts to enjoy when they returned from their mission. When told this by NASA as they linked up in space, they responded, "Tell Joe we want it up here." He mixed a cocktail to commemorate Britain's entry to the European Economic Community, using drinks from all the member states, which he called the Common Market. Sadly, it seems to have been a bit too much for us to handle, and were he still around now, I have no doubt that he would have invented another concoction, equally hard to swallow, called Brexit.
Good to hear about good old Joe Gilmore again.
Yeah, that was the very first plane tale, that one.
It was. And how long ago was that? Like 3 years ago?
Ages.
Ages.
Oh,
Sorry.
dear. That sounds
I mean, it
awful.
was like, I was hearing it for the first time again, probably because I didn't listen well the first time.
Oh, that can't be true, Steph.
No, it's not true. Might be true.
In
Sorry.
fact, it was
I
so long
enjoyed it.
ago, it wasn't even called a plane tale back then.
That's true. What? Did we call it anything?
No, we didn't call it a thing. It was feedback because I started it off saying, I hope you don't mind a little bit of feedback.
A pre plane tale
Plane
plane
tale.
tale.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Good to hear about that one again. This is kind of interesting. Well, to me anyway. Wayne sent in some feedback. He says, every time I walk past this in Denver International, I have to do a double take. And then he sent a couple of images. And I'm thinking, what is he talking about? Why does he have to do a double take? Well, apparently in the Denver International Airport, there is a really nice display of L. Ray B. Jeppesen, air safety pioneer. The guy, we talk about our aviation approach plates and
Jeppesen
charts,
manuals,
we call them
charts,
Jeppesens.
and things.
Yeah. So it's isn't it L. Ray, I think?
Elray. Elrey. Yep. I actually did not remember that was his first name, but there you go.
And he came up with, well, when he started flying back in the old flying the mail days, I believe, there were no charts and, approach plates and all that kind of stuff. It was all just handwritten notes, and he's kind of kept a little black book of all of these things, and they became the basis for a more formalized system of keeping track of this information for other pilots, and that's why we call them the Jeppesen charts, or JEPs. And in this photo, in this display case, there is one of these first navigational manuals, and it says Captain Jep and the little black book. And it does look, when you look at it just quickly, it looks like Captain Jeff.
I've actually done the same double take there. I believe this is in the display case is in a pedestrian connection between the main terminal, which is the Jeppesen terminal, and the A gates. So if you walk instead of taking the train, you go past all of these different display cases with various historical things and the whole story of Captain Jep.
Captain Jep.
Mm-hmm.
And if he were here today, I'm sure he'd have his own podcast as well.
And do you have a little black book?
I don't. Well, I used to when I was a young single
Probably
man.
can't tell you what's inside of it, though.
Yeah, I was curious to know. Did you add scores to your little black book?
Let's move on. So, hey, Wayne, you weren't the only one that had to do a double take in the Denver International Airport. It turns out that a United Airlines captain was on his layover at the Denver International Airport, right next to it at the Westin Hotel. And he was caught out of uniform. And you're thinking, well,
that's not so unusual.
What's wrong with that? I mean, I've seen pilots walking around all the
neither
time.
Captain Jeff or Captain Nick are in uniform right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
we're
at
out
least
of
not for
uniform.
flying.
This guy, though, Steph,
Yeah.
was completely out of his uniform and anything else. Yeah.
But
you mean
so
he
how did
wasn't wearing his uniform shreddies?
No, I don't think he was wearing a stitch of clothing.
Oh, Lord.
How did he get caught out without his uniform on, dear Captain?
Allegedly, he was strutting about in front of one of the hotel's 10th floor windows. According to the arrest report, first obtained by Denver ABC affiliate KMGH. The pilot was charged with indecent exposure, noting, quote, the suspect did open the window to his hotel room, which overlooks the hotel plaza. I think what they mean is probably the window drapes and shades, which overlooks the hotel plaza, and in full view of the public did stand in his window, fully nude, exposing himself and his genitalia to the general public, which I guess is part of his self. For his part, Captain Andrew Collins admits looking out the window while in the buff, but says there was absolutely nothing lewd about his actions, and he was not aware that he could be seen by passengers inside the terminal. He said, I was getting ready for a shower and was talking on the phone, and it was a beautiful morning, and I opened up the curtains to my window, and I couldn't see the terminal. According to the 54-year-old's attorney, while the window in question is visible from the terminal isn't easily seen from the room, leading the veteran pilot to believe he had more privacy than was actually the case. A TSA employee, however, told police that the pilot could be clearly seen, quote, touching himself and waving at the officer.
It's a bit of a
Hello.
stretch.
What do you think?
Hey, you down there.
He could have
Good to
been
see
waving
you.
at the person next to the officer. How does the officer know he was waving at him?
That's a good point. Some witnesses said, I was dancing, gyrating, and waving, he told the newspaper. I'm completely innocent. It's really unfortunate that it happened at all. Yeah,
And he might have just been having a scratch, like you do when you're standing in front of the window.
Like you do,
Like you do.
Like you do.
No one has ever done that before. Ever.
Right.
Ever.
So he didn't deny that he was in fact in front of the window with no clothes on, and so they handcuffed him and took him away. And now the interesting thing, and I was reading some other source about this incident, and they mention toward the end that that name sounds kind of familiar to me. And apparently Captain Andy Collins notified everybody that he was running for ALPA president in July, I think, of this year. Below, find a letter to the ALPA board of directors announcing the candidacy of Captain Andy Collins for ALPA president. He's a staunch advocate for protecting our profession as North American aviators. And they go on to talk about his run for, but believe it or not, after this incident, he removed himself from running as president of the Airline Pilots Association.
Interesting turn of events there.
Yes. It can't really help your.
So I guess what we take away from this is, if you're going to be in your birthday suit in your hotel room, perhaps just leave those curtains drawn until you're wearing something a little bit more covering.
Now, there are some windows that are made so that you cannot, you can't assume that nobody can see in, but maybe he was thinking that those reflective tint windows.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm going to have to rethink my procedure.
even if you're like up on the 20th floor and you can't see anything around you, just, think of the birds.
Poor birds.
Poor birds.
Good point, Steph.
I mean,
think of the birds.
Yeah.
That might be the title for this episode.
Lovely.
It says here, please feel free to contact me at your convenience.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I went to the webpage set up for his campaign, and it just says nothing is there anymore.
We couldn't find the page you were looking for.
Exactly.
You see, now I feel that was lost in translation there, because in the UK, we call a public toilet a convenience.
Oh, well, we don't here. That's why.
Huh? Wait, what?
Yeah, a convenience is a polite name for
a toilet. I see.
A public toilet.
And you give us a bad time about saying
thought
restroom.
It was the end of his.
I know, right? Come on, that's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all,
but it obviously it's not common. Otherwise, you would have heard of it.
No, I've definitely never heard of.
That he finished off his campaign blurb with going, please feel free to contact me at your convenience.
At your toilet.
That is funny because I think any one of us would say things the same way Captain Collins did in his sign off there.
Yeah.
Here in the U.S. That is a common way to say, contact me at your
Contact me
convenience.
At your convenience.
Yeah.
At your earliest convenience.
At your earliest, and definitely does not refer to.
But now, Steph, we're gonna every time we say that,
you have ruined it for me forever, Nick. I just want you to know.
Well, there you go. I've just looked it up. Here we go. Dictionary convenience. Number 1, the state of being able to proceed with something without difficulty. 2, a public toilet.
Wow.
Is this like the UK only dictionary?
Oxford?
Yeah. No, it happens to be, it doesn't say, well, it's the Google, but it does say brackets British brackets. Public.
Yeah.
For example, the large council car park next to the public conveniences.
Okay. Well, now we know.
I've learned something today.
Yes.
Can we end the show now? No, I'm just kidding.
Sure. Why not? I must say it's pretty much going down the convenience.
Ah, there you go.
Well, I suppose I'll be less confused the next time I'm in the UK and someone says that word to me.
Mm-hmm.
Good. I'm very glad to hear it.
Yes.
I've done my job today, then.
Okay, now, this next one, item 10. Is this Michelle, or Michael?
Well, it looks like Michelle Duprez. It looks like
a
French
name for Michael. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I see. He put in parentheses if I just read it. No, I didn't. Mike Delta. Michael Duprez. I'm just going to assume it's Mike. That's what we're calling you, Mike. It is Mike Delta here from Australia. In the interests of keeping the quid pro quo going between yourselves and Opposing Bases podcast, I just wanted to let you know that I learnt of your podcast from Opposing Bases. So whilst you have assisted them in widening their audience, at least in my case, they have widened yours. I've been listening to you for the last year or so, and also double-backed and caught up on a lot of episodes, singling out the ones that interest me. That should eliminate most of them. Then.
So he's listening to like,
look at it.
I have given up on the idea of listening to all of them, although now that I see the Plain Tales as a separate download on your website, I have no reason to listen to your regular show. No,
that's not very nice.
I will try. I will try to listen to all of them as I love the stories and history Nick tells in them. I also now know why an older colleague at work has nicknamed me Biggles. Okay. I recently passed my private pilot check ride. Yay!
Well done.
It's been a dream of mine since I was a boy. My father worked for Sabina Airlines years ago. That's the Belgian airline, right?
Yep. No longer
then
exists.
I remember Sabina, actually. Then Pan Am. Of course, I'm not a young man. And United here in Sydney. So we did quite a bit of traveling back in the days of 707s, DC-10s, 747s, etc. I'm looking forward to taking him on a scenic flight around the southeast coast of New South Wales in Australia.
That's where I used to live.
Cool.
Very cool.
Also, for G-Man, also known as Glaucus, in Australia, I believe you need a minimum of 1,500 hours for the Australian major commercial airlines, unless accepted through one of these new cadet programs. But as the team said, with the current situation of the pilot shortage, best to contact the airlines directly to see whether they would take a 40-year-old. I think that's good advice. The Royal Australian Air Force, the RAAF, will take people as a pilot up to the age of around 50, I believe. Wow, that's old. So that's an option, although that may take you away from your family. I found out about this while discussing with a recruiting officer for my daughter, and he asked me if I was interested to join. I wasn't sure if he was on a commission or something. That seems like really old to me, doesn't it to you, Nick?
Yeah, it does, because our guys have to retire at 55. So I'm going, ugh.
Yeah, by the time you're done with training.
Well, you always have to be careful with what a recruiter says.
Yeah, exactly right. And don't drink the beer. That's why tankards have a glass bottom.
Okay.
You heard of that?
No.
Well, it used to be the old way of recruiting was you accepted the Queen's shilling. So if the recruiter gave you a shilling, then that meant you were now in the army or in the navy or whatever.
Oh.
So one of the tricks they used to do to get you to take the shilling was to drop one into your beer. And as you finished your beer, you would go, oh, what's this? And you'd shake it out, and it would be a shilling in your hand. And then, the recruiter would go, you've taken the king's shilling. So now you're in the army. So they had a glass bottom. So you could look up into the bottom of your beer and see whether there was a shilling sitting in there.
How clever. It's cool.
So much useless trivia on this show tonight.
But I love it.
Loving it. Loving it.
No, I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's the old story.
It's a good story.
It's true to me now. Oh, well. Anyway, Mike says, anyway, thank you all for a very entertaining and informative podcast. And with my newfound license, I need clear skies. P.S. I tasted that durian fruit in Penang, Malaysia while working there. Besides the smell, it also has a bad aftertaste if you burp for 6 to 8 hours.
Geez, that's a long burp. Mine only last a few seconds.
You might want to check with a medical professional.
Yeah, if your burps go on longer than an hour, I should really start to worry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. That's what happens when you send us feedback.
Send more.
Yes. Not burps.
Good hearing from you. And I'm glad that, the opposing bases folks were able to point you our way. We do appreciate that. All right. Tom writes in, just thought I'd share this as it's mildly aviation related and pretty entertaining, particularly the fear of flight bit. If you get a chance, it's well worth a watch. Michael McIntyre is a well-known family-friendly British comedian with a Saturday night show. Part of the show features a prank played on an unwitting member of the public who on Friday, the 27th of November, happened to be a British Airways pilot. It turns out he's also a pretty good singer, too. I think a duet with Jeff would work well. No, this guy's a much better singer than I am. I thought it would be wise for me to send in some lighthearted feedback this time, as my last contribution to the monitored approaches debacle put the cat among the pigeons somewhat. Enjoying the show as always, and really appreciate the effort that goes into it. May the port always be passed to the left. He listens to those plain tales, doesn't he?
Silly man.
Mm-hmm.
Tom H. And I have a little snippet. So you need to, excuse me, the beer is talking again. Sorry.
If it lasts for 6 to 8 hours, make sure you check with your medical professional.
Finally for a couple seconds. But I can try harder. Not 6, 8 hours, though. Anyway, the link that he gave us was a YouTube video, which we'll have in the show notes, and you can watch the entire thing. And it is very entertaining. And the basic story is this BA pilot is also a singer, and his family basically recommended that he be part of this. What do they call it? I forgot.
It's a show.
Pardon me?
TV show.
Yeah, but I'm thinking the part of the PT show, the TV show was
the prank.
Yeah, the prank or whatever they had an actual name for it. But anyway, he was brought into a building, or actually part of the same building, I guess. But it was the whole idea was that he was part of this group of pilots that were kind of running a little seminar for people to have fear of flying. But of course, all the people in this group, everybody actually, except for this unwitting pilot, were actors. And at some point, they said, we have this simulator that's going to simulate turbulence. Would you like to come over here and help me set this up? And so they walk him through all these hallways and everything else. And it turns out that the simulator, this not cockpit, but a airplane cabin simulator, was actually on the stage of this big auditorium. And so then he was surprised. They drew the curtain away, and he's sitting there in the cabin in the passenger seat, looking out on the audience. And then he knew, that he was on the show, I guess.
He did look thoroughly gobsmacked.
He really did. I'm thinking to myself, does he really kind of, because in the part where they were showing him in the class, some of the people were making really ridiculous comments and asking very, very ridiculous questions. And he was kind of like trying hard not to crack up, and I'm thinking, at what point is he realizing that this is something's wrong about this? Something is not quite right. But as you said, Nick, he really did look gobsmacked that he was surprised that he was on the stage. And I'll just play a little snippet because I don't want to get in trouble of the very last part of the song he sang at the very end of the show.
Yes, I will reach the unreachable star.
Not bad for a pilot, huh?
No, I think he's got potential there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he could quit his day job, I think.
I think so, too.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Tom, for pointing that out. And watch the whole thing. I think that the very end was, rewarding, but I think watching the entire thing will make it that much better. Timo sent us some feedback. So you want to hear about it? Or let's see, should I read this first?
Yeah, Timo was in the chat room earlier. I wonder if he's
he was. Oh,
Yeah, he
shit.
was. No, you haven't seen him for a little while, but he was there earlier before we switched.
Okay, well, I hope he gets to hear his feedback. He sent us audio feedback. He says, "Hello, Captain Jeff. Hello, APG crew. This is Timo from Japan. I'm actually German, which you'll probably hear in the attached audio feedback. But I'm working on my PhD, which is also aviation related, and have been living here in Japan for quite a while. I've been listening to your show for over a year now, so I thought I'd shoot you some audio feedback." And in this feedback, he talks about what he's going to talk about. And you know what? Let me just play his feedback, and then I'll end with the last paragraph or so of what he wrote to us. So take it away, Timo.
Hello, APG crew. This is Timo from Japan. I've been listening to your show for almost a year now, so I thought it's finally time to give you some feedback. And I wanted to make it audio feedback, even though I don't have a soothing voice as Captain Jeff has, or the fine British gentleman accent as Captain Nick does. But bear with me for a little bit. Actually, I previously listened to the Omega Tau podcast, the German podcast made by Marcus, and he mentioned you quite a couple of times in his podcast. So I thought, give it a try, and I really liked it. So as I'm about to start my training for my private pilot's license, your show has been a great companion through all the studying process. But more about that later. As you all know, if you want to get a private pilot license, you will need a medical. So, and as many listeners to the show refer, what does one do if he has the APG syndrome? So when I filled out the MedExpress, I was thinking are you supposed to enter the APG syndrome in here? And of course, I didn't. This could be a joke that backfires. But still, I was curious to listen if my AME would know what the APG syndrome is. And this is a rough translation from German. But when I asked him if he knew what the APG syndrome was, he smiled at me and said, if I was talking about an auditory-induced syndrome that manifests in weekly episodes, I should not be concerned. However, he continued, I should closely monitor on which side of the 50% accuracy mark any information obtained by the syndrome is. Which brings me to episode 349. In episode 349, you talked about the Embraer incident in Portugal with the loss of control and the aftermath. Luckily, there the plane was able to land. And Captain Nick mentioned Japan Airlines Flight 123, which wasn't an incident, unfortunately an accident, and crashed into a mountain. Captain Nick said that all souls on board perished, which is not entirely true. Actually, 4 people survived. The real sad thing about that is during the loss of control part and when the pilots tried to rescue the plane, US military at Yokota Air Base was monitoring the flight path, and they were offering their help in search and rescue to the Japanese authorities. And they actually were able to locate the crash site. However, Japanese authorities declined all help, asked the American military, the US military, to retreat and continue the search on their own. However, they determined that nobody could have survived that crash and decided to further delay the research, the rescue operation. And so, unfortunately, until the morning, only 4 people survived this horrible crash, which still until today, if we only count accidents, so no terroristic attacks, is the highest soul loss in a single plane crash accident. Anyhow, now that I did my part to the 50% accuracy mark, let's get back to the more happier topics. And like I said, I'm about to get my private pilot license. And actually, in 2 weeks, I will come to your beautiful country of United States of America, pretty close to you. I'll be in St. Augustine, Florida, close to Jacksonville, and of course, Georgia. Which brings me to another topic you mentioned, and this is radio communication. And you mentioned that there are controllers out there that are more lax, more strict, and you mentioned Mr. Happy from Atlanta. So I'm asking you, do you recognize this voice?
Executive 984, cleared to Kilo Papa, Sierra Papa, the 1205 departure procedure, and then is filed. Climb and maintain 7,000. Expect flight level 310, 5 minutes after departure. Departure frequency will be 127.15, squawk 3272.
Yeah, that's the Toro 5 Asphalt 7,031.0, 5 minutes after, and 2715, 3272 for catch at 984.
Executive 984, missed a couple things. The clearance limit, Kilo Papa, Sierra Papa. If you said that, I didn't hear it. And you can expect flight level 310 will be 5 minutes after departure, sir.
Yes, sir. The flight plan to Kilo Sierra Papa Sierra, or excuse me, Papa Sierra Papa, and flight level 3105 after.
And didn't catch a call sent on that last transmission. That's where Executive 984, clearance limit, Kilo Papa Sierra Papa, and expect flight level 310 will be 5 minutes after departure.
Okay. In all fairness, this was taken from Vasa Aviation from YouTube and is probably a different controller. But even though he's quite strict, as we just heard, he's staying polite with it. And I think that's okay, especially for a person like me who is currently studying for his private certificate. Being by the rules is something that's quite helpful. However, I can still see how you guys who are more experienced say, does it have to be that strict? Everything was conveyed and he knows what I mean. So I see that. And I guess this comes with experience. So on my side, if I go on a solo flight, I'll make sure to let the controller know that I'm a student pilot. Not in the hope that he will go easy on me, but that everybody knows around that there's a person that is not experienced as they are. Anyhow, I think it's time to conclude my feedback. So let me finish with 2 questions. First, as I will be close to Georgia, do you have any recommendations to airports I could fly to? Let's say for a $100 hamburger. I was recommended Simmons Islands, but I'm open to any suggestions. And finally, from your experience, from your basic training, what was your most memorable advice your flight instructor gave you? Thank you very much for your hard work. I'm really appreciating it and looking forward to many, many more episodes. Blue skies and tailwinds. Sayonara, tschüss, und bye-bye. Your Timo.
Timo, great audio feedback. Thank you very much for that. You have a great sense of humor, and you're here with us still in the chat room. That's awesome. And I in the chat room listening to his feedback, I said, "Is that really true? Did the AME really know about our show?" But he said, "No, unfortunately, that's the lower side of the 50% mark."
It
made that up.
Feedback story though.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Very good. So yeah, let's see. I'm trying to remember.
Who I'm just going to jump right in with suggestions for his where to go to get a $100 hamburger. Unfortunately, I've not flown into a lot of the general aviation airports down that way. He did mention St. Simon's Island, which I have been into, but I don't recall that there's a restaurant on the field. I could be wrong.
But there are a bunch that are close by.
Yes. It's very easy to get to places nearby. I'm sure they have crew cars and or taxi and or Uber or whatever. And it's a great little airport to fly into right on the beach. I highly recommend going there if you're going to be in Jacksonville because it's not far at all. Wondering if Dispatcher Mike might know some general aviation airports in that area? Because I know he flies down to Florida occasionally for sun and fun, that type of thing. He's probably been into a few down that way that might be closer. He might have some recommendations for you if he's willing to help out and send in some suggestions or send them directly to Timo. Just a thought.
Or if you're listening to this show and you're familiar with a place or two that might be worth visiting for Timo, please send it to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com, and we'll talk about it on the next show or shows.
Yeah, it's coming up soon, December 12th to 16th. But I mean, that's a couple weeks worth where if some recommendations come in, we can get them over to Timo. So.
Yeah, but St. Simon's Island definitely would be.
Definitely go there. That was I've been in there. It's a really nice small airport to fly into.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with Timo. He's doing an aviation-related PhD in Japan. Wow. That sounds a wee bit complicated and difficult.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It does.
5 years.
Regarding the air traffic controller, no, that was not our very own air traffic controller in Atlanta, but it was very, very similar to the same kind of thing. And on one hand, you're thinking, well, he understood, recognized the voice of the guy. He knew it was this. But on the other hand, if you're going to do it by the book, then make sure you get it right. So I can see both sides of the coin on this one.
Mm-hmm. And, you could argue that was perhaps a little annoying, but I don't think he was necessarily rude about it. He wasn't chastising him. He was just being a little bit particular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the answer is get your readbacks right the first time, and then you won't be asked to do them again.
That's true. Good point. And anything else that he talked about there? I don't think so. Yeah, I would recommend that if you're filling out any kind of a medical application and it asks about things from which you might be suffering, I would definitely not mention the APG syndrome.
No, that's grounds for disqualification, 100%.
Yeah. Psychological.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's your advice. Thanks, Timo. And hopefully we'll have some more information for you. Excuse me. My chest is making noise now.
I thought it was more burps. 6 to 8 hours.
It's all the congestion I have in my chest.
It's
like
sorry, you're still suffering with that.
Person living inside of me, and it's not a baby. Let's see. I
don't know what that means.
Liz,
I was
help
just
me.
gonna let it go, and it just got weird.
Just got really weird.
Yeah.
At what point are we now? A little over 2 hours. That was a little while ago. Anybody have any ideas?
So she sent that at 7:15. It is now 7:53. So we're probably coming up on the 2:45 mark.
Yeah, about 15 minutes left. Okay. I'm just looking at some of these last items in here.
This is a 51-second audio. It says easy question. Is it truly easy? I have not listened to
we're going to find
It could be a
out.
surprise.
Alex, I think isn't Alex the one that sent us the question about the Muscle Shoals Airport and started that whole 3 or 4 episode
probably
beating of dead horse? I think it is. But you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and
take the risk.
I'm going to roll the dice right now, and here we go.
Good afternoon. This is Alex from Northwest Alabama, and hopefully this is a very simple and straightforward question for you all to answer. In my previous job, I flew hundreds of flights on what I'll call Acme Heart, and never once did I notice any atypical or anomalous situations occur. But my assumption is that from time to time there are moderate to serious events that pertain to equipment malfunctions or crew error that the crew has to handle but never makes it past the cockpit door. And I guess my question is, how frequently do these events occur? And can you give some examples of things that you've had to work out or that you've heard of throughout your career that, again, the passengers really never notice? Thanks for answering my question, and as always, have a great day.
Hey, that is an easy question, and it's an easy answer too. No, nothing ever happens. Let's go on with item number 14. What?
Where's your buzzer?
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna find it here. So I was pretty quick on the draw before, but took me a little bit longer this time. Yeah, okay. You want to go down to the truth here. Yeah, there are things that happen that are either mechanical malfunctions that aren't something that get the airplane conditioned to a point where we anticipate we're going to have to do something like an emergency evacuation or something serious. In fact, a lot of times a situation may occur, and it gets to the point where we never even actually have communicated with the flight attendants to even give them some inkling that there might be something going on that they might need to be aware of. And if you nip it in the bud, as what was the character on Andy Griffith? Nip it in the bud. Come on, what's his name?
Who?
Barney?
Which one? Barney?
Barney Fife?
Isn't he one of the Flintstones?
No, different show.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you got to it quickly and the situation resolved, it may be one of those things where for the moment it might be something pretty serious, and then taking care of the situation either from Barney Fife, thank you, Ivan, through the QRH or whatever, then you go, okay, everything's under control. There's no need, if we made a PA regarding everything, hey, folks, I just want to let you know that the co-pilot over here just made a really stupid error in the flight management system and we descended without clearance. And, but it's okay. Air traffic control is not going to issue a violation. This is not going to instill confidence in the passengers there. So, you're right to suspect that it's not like it's happening all the time, but I'm sure that there are instances where we encounter something, but we take care of it as we are trained to do. And there is absolutely no reason for anybody to know anything about it.
As long as you don't have a hot mic to the PA system.
Yeah, that's probably not good.
Oops.
Yeah. Oops. I was just kidding. Nick, what do you think?
Well, yeah, most minor ones, unless they're going to involve a return or a diversion, you're not really helping anyone by telling anyone about it, because there's going to be some nervous flyers on board, and they won't, the vast majority of the people won't understand the implications, and the rest probably won't believe what we're saying because they naturally assume that everyone in authority lies to them all the time. So there's always that problem. I think the worst probably I've had was an engine failure coming over the Atlantic, but on a 4-engine airplane, that's not an enormous drama. It wasn't like it exploded and fell off the wing. It just ran down. So we didn't bother saying anything. We landed and taxied in. I asked the fire trucks to stay, back. We only declared a pan anyway, to stay discreetly back. And we parked up, and the first person that came roaring onto the flight deck was the station manager, saying, "What have you told the passengers? What have you told the passengers?" And I said, "Well, we didn't tell them anything." He said, "Oh, thank heaven for that." He was just concerned that he would be faced with a lot of questions and social media problems, etc. So quite honestly, if it doesn't severely affect the safety and the passengers aren't required to do anything unusual, like do an extra safety brief or something like that, then I see there's little to be gained by letting them know. If it's something obvious, like you're now having to dump fuel or whatever, then an explanation is obviously required. And if part of the aircraft systems have obviously failed, then that is also a good thing. So if you get the word out rather than letting people guess, if it's something that they can observe, then that's the best way to deal with it. But otherwise, I'm a great believer in us dealing with it, because that is quite honestly our job, is to conduct the flight with all the safety backup systems we have safely, put the aircraft safely on the ground, and then they don't have to worry. It was not a problem.
Absolutely. Now you have smoke in the cockpit, rapid decompression, oxygen masks falling, an engine out there that's on fire. Obviously those are the kind of thing that people notice.
Yeah.
And that's when you need to say something about it.
Yeah, the first officer running up and down the cabin, screaming.
that sometimes needs an explanation.
That draws attention.
Yeah.
But it's a good question. All right, and it was a easy question and
we like
relatively
those questions. Send more of those.
yeah, not the ones about the traffic pattern. Okay,
Probably
and
thought
just
that was a pretty simple, straightforward question too.
Yeah.
Which I would have. Yeah.
so yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't realize what a can of worms that was. I didn't either, actually. If I'd known, I probably wouldn't have read it or played it. Steve, very quickly, this will be our last one. And the reason why I'm doing it is because this is Captain Steve, who is flying for Acme Purple. I believe this is him, isn't it? Let's see. Note details. Yes. Captain Steve Horn. The incident of the landing short in Indonesia, I think that was that all? No, that was the Aaron Naguri? No.
That was the one that landed short, but they rescued a lot of. Which one?
Everyone but one.
Everyone but one.
One
male passenger.
Different incident. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one was also a 737 though. Landed short, and he sent a link to a YouTube video of some U.S. Marines that happened to be stationed there, I guess, that went out on a little, what do they call those little inflatable boats?
A dinghy?
Or a dinghy, I guess.
A little inflatable boat is.
Yeah, those little inflatable boat things.
Yeah.
And with a little engine.
Rigid.
And they headed out to help with the rescue of the passengers. And it's really interesting to see, they arrive and, help the passengers get out of the airplane. And it's very, very interesting. But really, if I played it, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense because you really can't tell what's going on unless you look at the video itself. So very cool, though, that the U.S. Marine Corps came in there. And also some local fishermen as well in other boats were around. And you can see them in the video as well. People helping people because
kind of one of those best of humanity types of things.
Exactly.
It was almost amusing where the Marines pitched up on the other side of the airplane that all the other boats were. So they couldn't see anyone else. And when they got there, they were just like, there was nobody. There were a few escape hatches open.
Yeah.
They looked in and the airplane was empty.
It's pretty much already empty. Yeah.
It was just like one bloke.
We're here to help. Oh.
I guess we're late.
And then they go around the other side and okay. There's all these boats around here then. Okay, fair enough.
All right, let's go back to the beach and drink our beer again.
Go play with our rib.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's going to do it for today's show. Thanks, everybody, for downloading the show and listening to it. If you're new, welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, and we invite you to become part of our community, which is really the best part of this whole thing. Trust me, the show is just here to support the community. And if you want to learn more about that, head over to the airlinepilotguy.com website. And again, you can learn about the community and also about the co-hosts, the crew, and merchandise and the coffee fund and so much more. Oh, Plain Tales. You can listen to individual Plain Tale episodes if you'd like, and even subscribe to that as a separate feed, which I definitely encourage people to do. And if you do, by the way, just take the time, if you have a moment, to leave a great review of Plain Tales for Captain Nick on iTunes.
Yeah, appreciate that.
And let's see, we also have apps for our phones, our iOS and Android devices on their respective app stores. Just do a search for Airline Pilot Guy, and you'll find the app for free, no ads or anything else. And it's a great way to interact with the community and listen to the show and more. And we're also on social media.
You can find us on Twitter. We're at APG Crew. You can interact with the crew there, find our individual Twitter information pinned to the top of the page. Also head over to facebook.com/Airline Pilot Guy. More ways to interact with members of the community there, share stories about interesting aviation events. And I think we're going to pass it over to Hillel now, who Jeff has summoned, and he's going to tell us about Slack.
Hello. Come here.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share ideas and news We suggest episode and Playing Tales topics. We plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo at airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled HI11E1, Hotel India 11 Echo 1. And see you in Slack.
Thank you, Hillel. And, Hillel does this at my convenience.
Truer words were never spoken.
So long as it's not in your convenience.
Just at or about, in the vicinity of.
Until next time, wishing you clear skies and clear chest, unlimited visibility and tailwinds. Take care and God bless.
Cheers, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
I'll never think of convenience
no.
the same way.
Like I said, he ruined it for us.
Yeah.
Here,
well,
blissfully
I used to go for a rest
ignorant.
in a restroom until
I know it doesn't make sense either.
America.
Yeah, us blissfully ignorant Americans here just
Yeah.
thought that convenience was something,
And as for
Not
peeing
particular
in a
place.
bathroom, well, wow, how disgusting is that?
Yeah, we never call it the toilet or the WC. It's just the bathroom or the restroom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There is a toilet in the restroom.
There is, but that's a specific part of the bathroom or the restroom.
Yeah, I can understand
but
though.
who goes to rest in a toilet?
Well,
You know,
who goes to the
Really
I
not a
think
very
even now,
nice-
like in upscale like department stores, you go into the restroom and there's like a little seating area there before you enter into like the main part of the restroom. Maybe that's
the question
I
I
don't-
posed to you, Nick, is who pees in a lake? All right.
Fish.
Definitely not
ducks,
us.
Not us. No, we would never do
We
that.
would never.
But we don't pee in a lake. What are you on about?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Neither do I.
Nick's
What was
memories.
the other thing I was going to say? You got me. Oh, yeah. We also call it a cloakroom.
No, that's where you put your
That's
coat.
where you put your cloak.
Cloak.
Yeah, but it's attached to the place that you go for a pee. So you go to the
Exactly why we
cloakroom.
call it a bathroom, because it's actually attached to where the bath. But it's
Is.
usually not in this. Well, actually, no, I take that back.
Well, where do you put your cloaks then?
In the
In
closet.
the toilet.
In the bathtub, obviously. There's that bar above, and you hang them there.
I'm so confused.
I don't know anymore.
Love it.
I don't know anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Why is it we don't park on a parkway or drive on a driveway?
Well, you kind of drive on a driveway to
guess you
park your
do.
car.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've got it all wrong. We have.
Yeah. Well, I think we should all call them water closets.
I'm okay with that. We can do water closet. WC.
Hey, Timo, thank you very much. And you made it a great show today with your great feedback. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Cloakroom, coat room. Yep. You can tell everybody's a little bit behind our conversation here.
I don't know. Language. It's a fun thing.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways.
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? And communication, as we saw on that JFK controller, it's so important that we use clear, so many things on this show. We kind of basically, it boils down to good communication,
Mm-hmm.
to avoid problems.
Well, exactly right. If you're not getting it across one way, try a different way.
Yeah. It's like what's the definition of insanity, right? That guy was kind of insane.
Over and over again and expecting a different result. Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. To me, I just think that if you've reached that point where you've been released to be a controller on your own at a large international airport, that's a skill that perhaps you should possess, at least in a small amount. And like I said, combination of things, fatigue, maybe there were other stressors in his life going on, led to that being a frustrating experience for him. But that's where your professionalism has to rise above all of that and not let those personal things get in the way.
So true.
When people just talk louder. That's the best method of talking to someone who doesn't speak your language at all.
Obviously, it's
Exactly
not
right.
because they don't understand what you're saying. It's just that
'Cause
you're
they
not
can't
saying it
hear you.
loudly enough.
Talk louder.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
Well, it's getting late. Thank you, everyone, for being there for us. We do appreciate it. And do apologize for the technical snafu at the beginning with the loss of internet, but I think we recovered pretty well. Oh,
yeah.
You guys have already turned off your recorders, haven't you? I have
Nope.
not.
Doing so now.
Good reminder. Thank you.
Okay, and save. And we don't know when we're going to do the show next week, but it will be sometime next week. Guarantee that.
Yeah.
That was perfectly helpful.
Yeah. Anything? You doing anything next week, Nick?
Well, I'm off to St. Lucia on Sunday, and I get back on Tuesday. It's a short one, just a one-nighter. Get back Tuesday. So I've got Wednesday and Thursday at home there and back off to St. Lucia on Friday.
Oh. So if we have any listeners in St. Lucia, they should...
I don't know if we do, actually. I've never heard of a St. Lucia listener.
Why not?
Exactly.
You need to recruit some then.
Yeah.
It's your mission if you choose to accept it while you're down there.
Not just St. Lucia. Yeah. But also Tobago, because my next St. Lucia's involve a Tobago shuttle.
Oh.
A what? Who?
Tobago.
Well,
wait, I'm sorry. I just
instead of having a day off. Instead of having a day off, we have to go to Tobago and back.
I see.
Yeah.
That's a nice short flight, huh?
It's 35 minutes. Takes all day.
Yeah, I was going to say, for that short little
Caribbean.
Yes. Yes, and it's not even Grenada where we get the nice chocolate.
They have really good rum in Grenada, too.
He's got to fly.
Well, I mean, he can take it home with him.
I see.
I could, yes, because my lovely wife loves the chocolate.
I was talking about the rum. The chocolate's fine, too. I like both, actually.
So, next week, we got PT UK on Wednesday. That's the recording of the live show.
And
then Thursday.
Wednesday?
It's free. Yeah, I think the 5th.
I thought it was a Tuesday.
No, it's Wednesday.
No, I think it's on Wednesday.
Oh, that's
I
right.
think they have it at a...
we mentioned
that's the second day of
was it
my
Wednesday?
trip.
Yes.
Okay, I was thinking Tuesday because it's the second day of my trip.
What show number was this today?
This was 351.
Thank you.
Um,
That's not annoying at all.
Well, I'm just practicing for the PT UK live show when I'll be wearing my beard ornaments.
So, yeah, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to make the PT UK because I'm going to be flying all ding dang day on Wednesday.
They're starting it a little early for me.
Well,
Wednesday.
you should record a little Christmas greeting and send it in.
That would require way too much effort.
You're not doing play tales. No, actually, you do quite enough.
All right.
You
know what?
Definitely not going down that path.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we stop the broadcast and then have a quick little meeting and then call it a night?
Meeting of the minds. Excellent.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for
everybody.
listening.
Thanks for sticking with us.
Good night.
Sticking to us.
Not what I said. And you.
I know. Sorry.